Mr. Lee rushed into the luxury mall to find Clara Sterling standing beside Brooke Lynn, her face a thunderous mask. He was still trying to process why his notoriously headstrong young miss, who despised Clara, would be seen with her when Brooke's words hit him. The faint smile on Brooke's face froze. Mr. Lee, what did you just say? Her voice trembled, certain she had misheard. A suffocating tightness gripped her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. Seeing her eyes redden with unshed tears, Mr. Lee felt a pang of pity. Miss Lynn, the Sterling family has kept this under wraps. That's why you didn't know. He took a steadying breath. Jason Miller has already signed a marriage contract with Miss Sterling. All that's left is the official license. If you don't believe me, you can ask her yourself. Mr. Lee gestured toward Clara, who radiated pure menace. As he did, he noticed the blood dripping from her clenched fist, and his heart jumped. When the world had happened. In all his years managing the Lynn family's affairs and dealing with the Sterlings, he had never seen Clara this incandescent with rage. Clara, is it true? Brooke's voice was a ragged whisper as she turned to her rival, her eyes bloodshot. She refused to believe it. Jason had pursued her for a year. He wouldn't lie to her, would he? It was impossible. Clara's glare was venomous. Brooke, if you hadn't kept forcing yourself between us, Jason never would have run away. He had already agreed to stay with me at the Sterling estate. He was going to give me a child. The cold, hard words struck Brooke like a physical blow, sending her spiraling into an icy abyss. A chilling numbness spread from her heart through every limb. Right. Huh. Ha ha ha. A bitter, manic laugh escaped her crimson lips. She staggered, the world tilting and blurring around her. Every word Jason had ever said to her now replayed in her mind, and she saw herself for what she was, a clown, a puppet played by a few sweet nothings. She had been so completely, utterly fooled. Miss Lynn. Mr. Lee stepped forward, his heart aching for her, but she shoved him away. Get out, she shrieked, her voice cracking. All of you get out. Find Jason. I'm going to kill him. Like a woman possessed, Brooke flew into a rage, her eyes frighteningly red. She began smashing her fists against the storefront's display window. Shards of glass sliced into her palms and cheek, drawing blood she didn't even seem to notice. Her murderous intent was palpable, but the glistening tears betraying her in the corners of her eyes told the real story. Since Jason had come into her life, her bipolar episodes had become rare. But now, with him gone, she was losing control. Watching his charge unravel, Mr. Lee felt a surge of regret. He had thought that revealing the truth would make Brooke finally give up on Jason and refocus on the family business. He had never imagined her feelings ran this deep. Psycho, Clara muttered, her gaze sweeping over them with cold disdain. She turned and walked away, her voice sharp with lethal purpose. Find him. I want him before Brooke Lynn does. Rain lashed down on a stand of birch trees in a state park preserve upstate. Dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, Jason Miller drove a shovel into the muddy earth, digging, lifting, and then dumping the heavy soil onto the still form of Robert Miller. Behind him, parked in the gloom, was a black SUV. Inside, a young woman with her hair in two small braids lounged in the passenger seat. She wore a stylish cartoon print jacket, a hoodie, and sneakers, her pale legs propped up on the open window frame, swinging idly. Her wide, bright eyes were fixed with keen interest on Jason's work. Jason glanced back, exasperated. Sprite, what kind of employee are you? Sucking on a lollipop while your boss does all the work. I'm docking your pay. The little brat was having the time of her life. And here he was, with a throbbing hand from breaking his own damn fingers, still planning on paying her salary. Sprite swung her feet, unfazed. No way. It's rainy and gross out there, and that old creep stinks. She took the lollipop out of her mouth to make her point. Besides, I'm not doing nothing. I'm monitoring comms for any sign of Clara or Brooke. With that, she turned away and slumped down in her seat, ignoring him. Jason's eye twitched. He turned his attention back to his uncle. Robert was buried up to his neck, blood still seeping from a gash on his forehead. He was unconscious. Hey, rise and shine. Your Uber's here, Jason said, prodding Robert's head with the shovel. A low groan escaped the man's lips. With another nudge, Robert's eyes fluttered open. His mouth was gagged. He saw Jason looming over him like a specter in the rainy darkness and realized his body was encased in earth. The whites of his eyes rolled back, and he passed out again. Jason actually laughed. Wake up. If you want to live, tell me who was really behind that fire all those years ago. If you do, I might let you go. His face was a cold, hard mask as he ripped the filthy sock from his uncle's mouth. Robert coughed, his vision clearing. Recognizing Jason, his eyes filled with hatred. "Humph, I underestimated you. To think you figured out the fire was an accident. I should have smothered you in your crib." He spat. "But what does it matter? You'll never get the Miller inheritance without my signature. You think you can touch me? You dare kill me?" He was confident. After years of controlling the estate, his network was deeply entrenched. Jason needed him alive. Ha ha ha. Jason's sudden, cold laughter echoed through the desolate woods, sending a chill down Robert's spine. Before he could say another word, Jason turned and walked back to the SUV, as if he'd forgotten Robert was even there. "Jason, what are you doing? Get back here." Robert panicked. Jason merely glanced over his shoulder. "Since you don't want to talk, you can stay here forever," he said coolly. "This is a state wildlife preserve. I'm sure you'll love it." He climbed into the driver's seat. Just as the door shut, a blood-curdling howl ripped through the night. Robert's face went white with terror. "Enjoy the parting gift, Robert. It's the least I could do after everything you've given me." Inside the SUV, Jason's smile vanished. He casually tossed the new, expensive trifold phone Brooke had given him out the window, then slammed his foot on the accelerator. The vehicle tore away from the clearing. At that exact moment, a notification lit up Brooklyn's phone. It was a GPS location. The haze of despair in Brooke's eyes was instantly replaced by a flash of manic joy when she saw the ping on her screen. "Mr. Lee, go, now, to this location," she yelled, her eyes still red as she scrambled to her feet and sprinted out of the mall. A strange, conflicted feeling bloomed in her chest. He hadn't destroyed the phone she gave him. Whether he knew about the tracker or not, the fact that he hadn't gotten rid of it. Was that his way of telling her there was more to this? That he had his reasons? "Miss, are you sure about this?" "He lied to you, Mr. Lee urged, trying to keep up. Even as an outsider, he could see it plainly. Jason might have genuinely liked his miss once, but now there wasn't a trace of affection left. Otherwise, he never would have been so careless with her feelings. Why couldn't she see it? "You're wrong." Brooke screamed as if he'd struck her. "I don't believe it. Whatever is going on, I have to see him and ask him myself." She clung to a sliver of hope. Even the smallest possibility was enough for her pride. Brooklyn had not declared this relationship over, which meant Jason Miller had no right to end it either. Besides, he must have seen the tracker and chose not to disable the phone. Was he signaling her, inviting her to find him? Lost in her turbulent thoughts, Brooke didn't notice several of Clara's bodyguards nearby witnessing the scene. They quickly relayed the information. When Clara heard that Brooke had Jason's location, the chill in her eyes intensified. It all made sense now. It all clicked into place. He ran away. To elope with her. "Fine, Jason. Just fine. You better pray I don't find you," Clara hissed, a cruel smile twisting her lips. She turned to Ava in the driver's seat, her voice like ice. "Follow Brooklyn. She'd like to see who had the audacity to escape her grasp, right under her nose. If he was truly running away with that woman, she wouldn't hesitate to break his legs, build him a gilded cage, and keep him as her pet forever." With both the Sterling and Lynn families mobilized, the rainy streets of New York City erupted into a chaotic symphony of sirens and screeching tires. Meanwhile, Jason was already on a highway outside the city limits. "Jay, why didn't you just force him to sign over the Miller inheritance back there?" Sprite asked from the passenger seat, munching on cucumber-flavored potato chips. "Are you serious?" Jason flicked her on the head. "You think getting an inheritance is as simple as a signature? Besides, the city contract auction is in 2 days. As long as we win that bid, the scraps of the Miller family business will fall into our laps sooner or later." The only reason he wanted the inheritance was because it belonged to his parents. That, and he needed to investigate the true cause of their deaths. He couldn't help but chuckle at the girl beside him. "You little hustler." She was a chip off the old block. "Okay, so where are we going now?" Sprite pouted. "I just saw in the news feeds that those 2 psychos have the whole city looking for you. We can't go back. What about the auction?" Jason already had a plan. "I'm dropping you off at school. I'll go lie low at Janine's for a couple of days. For the auction, I'll wear a mask and go with her." He reached over and affectionately ruffled her hair, a wave of fondness washing over him. The last few days caught between Clara and Brooke had nearly driven him insane. Sprite, for all her little devilish moments, was a breath of fresh air compared to those 2. And then there was Janine. Now, that was a real woman. 1,000 times more of a woman than Brooke or Clara could ever hope to be. Sprite's soft hair was now a mess. At the mention of Janine's name, a flicker of jealousy crossed her face. "Oomph. And here I thought you broke out just to hang with me. I was even going to hide you in my dorm. But no, you're running off to that Janine Hansen." "What's wrong with that?" Jason raised an eyebrow, unconcerned. Professor Hansen is married now. I never even sent a wedding gift. He knew it was a bit improper for a male former student to stay with her, but her house was huge. She could spare a room. If he stayed at Sprite's dorm, he'd surely be discovered. Besides, it had been a long time since he'd seen Janine. After Vivian, she was the woman who had helped him the most. She was gentle and intelligent, radiating a kind of maternal warmth, and she even looked a bit like Vivian. During his sophomore year, when he was at his most lost and rebellious, she had taught him so much. He just started G-Corp back then and often went hungry. She would invite him over and cook for him. Having lost his own mother at a young age, Jason had never known that kind of love. Janine's presence filled a void. It got to the point where he developed a crush on the young teacher, even writing a love letter that he'd hidden away, never to be sent. He was relieved when it got lost. He would have died of embarrassment if she'd ever seen it. A smile deepened on his face as he reminisced. He quickly drove Sprite back to campus, then plugged Janine's address into the GPS. His mood was light for the first time in days. But back in the birch forest, the night was anything but. Stay back. Don't come near me. Robert Miller thrashed his head wildly, his eyes wide with terror as a pack of wolves closed in on him. He was about to lose control of his bladder. The wolves, of course, paid him no mind. One of them lunged, its teeth sinking deep into the soft flesh of his cheek. Rip! An agonizing tear of skin and muscle sent a wave of shock through him. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted. The pack was about to descend when several beams of light cut through the darkness. A convoy of black luxury cars had arrived. Brooke, in the passenger seat of the lead car, saw the wolves circling something on the ground next to a discarded trifold phone. "Jason!" she screamed, assuming the worst. The wolves scattered at the sound. Ignoring Mr. Lee's shouts of "It's dangerous," Brooke threw open her door and sprinted into the clearing. But when she reached the spot, she saw it wasn't Jason at all. It was a disheveled, bearded old man. She looked closer. "Robert Miller, you useless old man. What are you doing here? Where's Jason? Tell me where he is." Furious, Brooke snatched up the phone and kicked Robert in the head, trying to rouse him. All this effort for nothing but a half-dead geezer. She was so angry she could have dug him up and fed him to the wolves herself. "Mr. Lee rushed to stop her. Miss, he's just a mess right now. If you kick him again, he'll be a dead mess." Robert was already bleeding from the neck where the wolves had bitten him. One more kick from his miss, and they'd have a real problem on their hands. Brooke glared down at him, her eyes still blazing. Just then, the brilliant headlights of a Maybach swept over them. Clara Sterling, dressed in a black trench coat, stepped out of the car, her expression frigid as she clicked across the muddy ground in her heels. She glanced at the pathetic figure on the ground, and a cold smirk touched her lips. "And here I thought the boy was actually trying to elope with you. Turns out it was all in your head." Her tone was dripping with mockery. "Clara, what did you say?" Brooke rounded on her, Clara's words striking a raw nerve. She couldn't deny it. Jason was gone. He had truly abandoned the year-long chase, the entire relationship. "Tell me, where is he?" she screamed, kicking Robert Miller again. Robert's eyes shot open, and a crazed, gurgling laugh escaped his lips. Jason, it wasn't me. They made me do it. Son, Dad will kill Jason for you. I will." He had completely lost his mind, his words a nonsensical slur. Everyone stared, stunned. Robert Miller was a mediocre man, but he was still the head of a significant NYC corporation. How could he have broken so easily? What had he seen? Clara's eyes narrowed. It seemed Jason was more than just a simple piece of prey to be controlled. What else was he hiding to be able to drive a man like Robert Miller to this state? Brooke, however, was past such considerations. "What are you all standing around for?" she roared into the rainy night. "Go find him." Clara gave her one last dismissive look before turning and getting back in her car. Neither woman gave a second thought to the man buried in the mud, their minds solely focused on Jason. Mr. Lee's eye twitched as he looked at Robert. Finally, he dialed 911 before hurrying after Brooke. Robert Miller could take his chances with fate. On the outskirts of New York City, warm light spilled from the windows of a spacious villa. "Jason will be here soon. Go buy some fresh fruit. And he loves seafood. Don't forget to get some shrimp." A woman in an apron, her figure curvaceous and her demeanor gentle, bustled around the kitchen. Her wavy brown hair was tied back, and her face, which radiated a maternal softness, was filled with anticipation. Her eyes darted to a pink envelope, a letter, sitting on the counter, and a faint blush colored her cheeks. She wore minimal makeup, but her features were picturesque, her smile lighting up her almond-shaped eyes. Even in the haze of the kitchen, she seemed to carry a soft, gentle fragrance, a blend of warmth and subtle allure. From behind, a man in his 30s watched her with a strange expression. The more he listened to her humming happily to herself, the angrier he became. That bitch. He and Janine Hansen had been married for over a year. It was a contractual arrangement, a union of convenience for their families, but still, she wouldn't even let him touch her hand, let alone cook for him. And now, just because some former student was coming for dinner, she was personally preparing a feast. Janine, he's just some broke kid. Is all this really necessary? The man muttered, stepping forward and wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. What are you doing? Janine recoiled as if electrocuted. Leland, I've told you to stay out of my affairs. This is a marriage of convenience. You do well to remember that. Her gentle face instantly turned to ice, but the blush still lingering on her cheeks only fueled Leland's desire. Janine, we are legally married. Is this any way to treat me? He said, his face darkening as he advanced on her. And how should I treat you? If it weren't for your infertility, your father never would have arranged this contract with my family. We would have been strangers, she retorted, taking a step back. The hand hidden behind her back tightened its grip on a fruit knife. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a glint of steel. She had been forced into this marriage. She thought they could at least be civil. But recently, Leland's intentions had become disturbingly clear. She had already considered murder. In the past year, her research had yielded some key breakthroughs. If she used her scientific knowledge to eliminate this problem, not even the NYPD could trace it back to her. But that was a last resort, only if he crossed the line. Her words, however, struck his deepest insecurity. You bitch, what did you say? His face contorted with rage, and he raised his hand to slap her. Janine tensed, readying the knife. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. The crisp sound froze them both. A maid entered the kitchen. Ma'am, there's someone at the door, she stammered, taking in the scene. Leland's hand remained awkwardly in the air. Ah, good. I'm coming, Janine said, the first to recover. She quickly put down the knife and followed the maid out, but not before giving Leland one last, deep look. She grabbed an umbrella and headed for the front gate. Outside, Jason had just parked the SUV and pressed the doorbell for the second time. He was starting to wonder if Janine was home. Had she gone out for groceries? The rain was coming down harder now. He was about to turn back to the car when he heard a click. The gate swung open. He turned, and there was Janine, holding an umbrella, dressed in a form-fitting white sweater that highlighted her stunning, womanly figure. Jason, she called out, her voice filled with a gentle, surprised delight. He felt a jolt run through him. He looked up and saw Janine Hansen's beautiful face under the black umbrella. Her eyes lit up with genuine joy at the sight of him. Jason, however, just stared, momentarily lost for words. The last time he'd seen her was years ago. She had been in her mid-20s then, a gifted academic who had served as a temporary instructor for one of his high school classes. She couldn't be more than 28 or 29 now. Time hadn't aged her. It had only added a layer of gentle charm and allure. Her almond-shaped eyes, so similar to Vivian's, combined with a personality that also reminded him of his lost friend, always left him feeling dazed. Professor Hansen. Hi, Jason managed, his voice a little awkward. Janine's gaze traveled from his face down to his body. His black tactical jacket was soaked from the rain, clinging to the sharp lines of his muscles. At well over 6 feet, with a ruggedly handsome face that held a hint of a rebellious streak, he was all coiled tension. The veins on his forearms stood out, a testament to years of training. He radiated a potent, masculine energy, young, virile, and powerful. Janine's face grew warm. She couldn't help but compare him to the pathetic man cowering inside her house. They were both men, but Leland was just a skinny weakling whose gaze always made her skin crawl. The contrast with the vibrant, roguish young man before her was stark. Jason, it's been years. I didn't realize you'd gotten so tall. Her voice hitched, and she quickly averted her eyes. Her hand, clutching the umbrella, was slick with sweat. A few years ago, he was just a sweet, scruffy kid in her eyes. Now, he was a man, transformed, towering over her by a full head. Professor, don't tease me. No matter how tall I get, I'll always be your student, Jason said, breaking into one of the few genuine smiles he'd shown in days. Janine blushed and finally snapped out her trance. Listen to me, just standing here talking. Jason, come inside. You'll catch a cold. She quickly moved the umbrella to shield him from the rain. Thanks, Professor. Jason didn't hesitate, stepping through the gate. But as he looked up, he saw a man's figure standing like a ghost in the entrance hall, staring daggers at them. Professor Hanson, is this a bad time? Jason stopped in his tracks. He knew she was married, and showing up like this, a male former student, was definitely pushing it. If it was an inconvenience, he'd find somewhere else. Hearing the hesitation in his voice, Janine looked up and saw Leland. A shadow crossed her face. Jason, don't worry about it. I bought this house with my own money. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Her tone turned colder as she led him into the main hall, pointedly ignoring Leland. Jason frowned. The atmosphere between them was definitely off. Had they been fighting? Before he could dwell on it, he saw the dining table laden with a full spread of food. His eyes lit up, but then he involuntarily thought of the meal Clara had made for him earlier that day. For a moment, he was lost in thought. He'd run away. That madwoman was probably turning the city upside down, looking for him right now. What are you thinking about? Janine waved a hand in front of his face. Come on, try this. I just made it all. It's everything you used to like back in school. See if the taste has changed. Her gentle face came back into focus. Thank you, Professor. You're still looking out for me, he said gratefully, sitting down across from her. You're still so formal with me, kiddo, she said with a laugh, placing a piece of fish on his plate. Of course. I'll always be grateful to you, Professor. A strange, unreadable emotion flickered in Janine's eyes. Grateful? Is that all? She thought. She looked up, her smiling eyes locking onto his. Such a sweet talker. But I seem to recall a rumor going around school back then, that someone wrote me a love letter. She said it teasingly, but the words hit Jason like a freight train. He nearly choked on his food. Puffed. Cough, cough. He pounded his chest, his face turning beet red. Professor, where did you hear such nonsense? Holy crap. How could she know about that? He'd written that letter under his blankets with a flashlight. He never even sent it. It was lost somewhere in the abyss of his past. Who the hell had been spreading that story? He stole a glance at her face, his heart hammering. Even though she wasn't his teacher anymore, he still felt a natural sense of respect and taboo. Those feelings were just a stupid high school crush. He respected her deeply and would never cross that line. But being called out like this? He wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Seeing his reaction, Janine burst out laughing. Jason, I didn't say who it was. You wouldn't happen to know, would you? Why else would you be so flustered? Her eyes, full of mirth, studied his reddening face. Jason realized he'd walked right in her trap. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Leland re-enter the room. A savior. This must be Professor Hanson's husband, right? Jason's eyes lit up. He jumped up and rushed over to shake Leland's hand. Sir, Mr. Professor-in-law. He fumbled for a proper term, feeling incredibly awkward. Even more awkward was Leland, who had been glaring at them from a distance. Jason's sudden, enthusiastic greeting caught him completely off guard. A trick? This bitch brought her boy toy home, and he is the nerd to shake my hand? This is a challenge. A blatant provocation. Only Janine's eyes darkened as she watched their hands meet. Jason, come back and eat, she said. Her voice was as soft as water, but it held an undeniable command. At the same time, her grip on her fork tightened until her knuckles turned white. She had thought that after all these years, he had come to see her because he cared. Was he really this happy to see her married? Then why did he write that letter? Jason was taken aback by Janine's sudden command. He glanced at Leland, who shot a venomous look back at Janine. He got the message loud and clear and quickly returned to his seat. Something was definitely wrong here. The tension between Janine and her husband was more than just a simple argument. Not wanting to get involved in their domestic affairs, Jason decided to focus on his food. Surprisingly, Leland just glared at them for another moment before stalking away. Janine's warm smile returned as she handed Jason a set of fresh clothes. You're soaked. I bought these for my father, but they should fit you. Go get changed. Thanks, Professor. Jason stood up to take the clothes, his fingers accidentally brushing against hers. He pulled back instantly. Janine's gaze darkened, but a strange sense of pleasure washed over her. She suppressed the heat rising in her eyes and watched as he disappeared into the bathroom. Only then did she turn, walk back to the kitchen, and pick up the pink envelope. On it, in Jason's slightly immature handwriting from years ago, were her name. Janine's eyes glowed with an intense, unreadable emotion. She had kept this letter all this time. She had never changed her phone number, hoping he might one day call. But years passed, and she heard the news of him pursuing and eventually getting together with Brooklyn. The hope had faded, and yet, tonight, he had sought her out. Years ago, on her first day as a substitute teacher, she had found him sleeping at his desk. She hadn't thought much of the seemingly lazy kid, but when he saw her, he not only silenced the rowdy class for her, but also helped her navigate the school's politics, securing her position. Jason had done it initially because she looked like Vivian, but her genuine kindness later earned his deep respect and gratitude. After that, he was always around like a loyal shadow. Her feelings for the boy back then were complicated. It was only after he left the school that she found the letter he'd left behind in his dorm. After all this time, Jason, you still came back to me, she whispered to the letter. Just then, her phone lit up. The screen showed an incoming call from Brooklyn. Janine raised an eyebrow, slid her finger across the screen, and powered the phone off. A faint smile played on her lips as she walked toward the bathroom. She remembered. There were no towels inside. That boy, he would have to call for her soon. At the Lynn family residence. What's going on? Why won't it connect? Brooke stared at her phone, suppressing her rage, but a terrible premonition was creeping into her heart. A few bodyguards entered the room. Have you found him? She demanded. Miss, we've searched the entire city. There's no sign of Jason Miller. We tracked the SUV he was in to the edge of the Birch Forest Preserve, but after that, it entered an area with no surveillance cameras. All we know is that road leads out to the suburbs. The suburbs. That was a huge area encompassing several different towns and counties. A full search would take weeks. Brooklyn did not have that kind of patience. Useless. A bunch of useless idiots, she screamed, her face contorted with fury. The small cuts on her cheek began to bleed again. She bit her lip, staring at the 99+ missed calls to Jason on her screen, her eyes growing redder. Jason, you'd better hide for the rest of your life. Don't you ever let me see you again. Her mind raced. If he went to the suburbs, there was only one person he would go to, Janine Hansen. It was the most likely possibility. Besides, Janine never ignored her calls. Brooke and Jason weren't in the same grade, but missed her. Lee had once hired the academically brilliant Janine as a private tutor for her. That's when she learned Janine had been Jason's high school teacher. She was always praising him, and it was clear they had a good relationship. Brooke hadn't thought much of it then. Even now, she didn't seriously think anything was going on between them. There was a 10-year age gap, after all. But Jason had no other family or close friends in the city. Where else would he go? Get the car ready. We're going to Janine Hansen's house in the suburbs. With a decision made, she stormed out. Whether he was there or not, she had to check. If he wasn't, she'd just stay at Janine's, have her men lock down the suburbs, and find him. He wasn't getting away. Meanwhile, at the Sterling estate. Miss Sterling, what are you doing here? The madam isn't back yet, a guard said respectfully as Bianca Sterling entered the main hall. Bianca's eyes were cold, but she maintained a plastic smile. I'm here to see my aunt. Am I? Uncle. She spat out the last word with venom. Is my aunt here? Ah, Miss Sterling, you just missed them. The madam and her husband went out and haven't returned. Went out. A flicker of malice crossed Bianca's face. Fine, you can go. I'll just walk around the estate while I wait for her. But the guard hesitated, but a single icy glare from Bianca shut him down. Yes, ma'am. He bowed and quickly left to report her arrival to Clara. He had never seen the normally sweet and gentle Miss Bianca look so cold. He had a feeling that if he had pressed the issue, things could have gotten ugly. Once the guard was gone, Bianca's face turned to stone. She began to wander through the massive estate, her sharp eyes scanning every corner. Finally, she entered a large dressing room. It was filled with men's and women's clothing, all meticulously organized. Two maids were tidying up, gathering a few items to be laundered. As they tossed the clothes into a hamper, Bianca's eyes locked onto a school uniform. Her pupils constricted. Wait, she said, her voice dangerously low. Whose uniform is that? Until that moment, Bianca had only harbored a sliver of suspicion. But seeing that familiar uniform, her heart plummeted. It was an A-list university uniform, and it looked exactly like the one Jason always wore. No, it can't be, she murmured, refusing to accept it. When she first knew Jason, he was just a poor kid from the countryside who could barely afford to eat. How could he possibly be connected to the Sterling family, one of the wealthiest dynasties in New York? The two maids looked at her in confusion, a little frightened by her expression. Miss Sterling, are you all right? That's our new master's uniform. Bianca's head snapped up. She grabbed one of the maids by the collar, her eyes bloodshot. Tell me, what is the name of Clara's husband? Tell me now. Her cute face was twisted into a terrifying mask of rage. The maid went pale with fear. Just then, a cool, detached voice came from behind them. Bianca, what's going on? Clara stood there, her arms crossed, a cold glint in her narrowed eyes. Her furrowed brow made her displeasure clear. Oh, Aunt Clara. Bianca slowly turned, forcing the fury from her eyes, but her smile was stiff. Auntie, I thought you and Uncle went out. Why are you back so soon? I was just hoping to finally meet him. She peered behind Clara, her expression unreadable. The hand hidden behind her back dug its nails into her palm. A bloodthirsty look flashed in her eyes. She had to know if it was him. If it was her brother, she was afraid she might actually. At the same time, a sliver of resentment crept into her gaze as she looked at Clara. Why? Clara already had everything. The sterling fortune, status, the admiration of all. She could have anything she wanted. Why did she have to take the one thing that Bianca cared about? Clara noticed the darkness in her niece's eyes and grew wary. He ran away, she said flatly. A disobedient little pet. He was deceiving me from the very beginning. When I catch him, I'll kill him myself. She watched Bianca's reaction out of the corner of her eye. Her niece's response was far too emotional. Bianca had never cared about her business dealings or her men. Why was she so agitated now? Could it be that she also knew Jason? Or was there some other connection? Bianca froze, her expression turning bizarre. He ran? In this city, someone can actually escape from you. She squinted, her thoughts a tangled mess. She wanted to ask who this mysterious uncle was, but Clara's guarded look made her realize she had already shown too much. A chill ran down her spine. Although she was Clara's niece, their relationship was one of mutual convenience. She couldn't afford to be so transparent. Well, Andy, do you need me to have my people help you investigate? Bianca forced her emotions down. If she could use Clara's authority, combined with the underground network she had built over the years, she could definitely find Jason before Clara did. Clara considered it, frowning. Just then, Ava rushed in. Madam, we got a lead. Both Clara and Bianca snapped their heads toward her. Where is he? They said in unison. Ava was stunned. Me, Miss Bianca, what are you doing here? She didn't think Bianca even knew her new master. Why was she reacting like this? Clara cleared her throat. Just tell me where he is. Madam, we don't have his exact location, but our intel shows he was last headed toward the suburbs. And just a few minutes ago, Miss Lynn also headed in that direction. We believe she might be going to find him. Clara's face instantly darkened. Get the car. We're going to the suburbs. Behind her, Bianca's expression shifted. Miss Lynn? She remembered the nasty woman who had been with her brother at school was named Lynn. The sense of crisis intensified. She clenched her teeth as she watched Clara leave. With no official reason to follow, she could only pull out her phone and make a call. Find out where my brother is right now. And I want all the information you can get on Clara Sterling's new husband. Everything. Normally, she could have just asked for a name, but the Sterling family had become a fortress since Evan's incident. Anyone who knew the details of Clara's marriage had gone into hiding, terrified of being implicated. She couldn't just sit back and wait. No one was allowed to take her brother from her. Not even Clara. If that man truly was her brother, she would never allow it. At the villa in the suburbs, Jason had no idea that 3 different factions were now hunting for him across the city. After a quick, warm shower, he reached for a towel and found nothing. You gotta be kidding me. Professor Hansen is this forgetful. Confused but with no other option, he stood in the bathroom, hoping to air dry before getting dressed. He had no idea that Janine was standing right outside the door. It never even occurred to him to call out to her for a towel. It was far too awkward, especially with her husband in the house. Janine, however, had been waiting with anticipation. When she heard no sound from the bathroom, her expression slowly darkened. Jason, she called, her voice soft as she moved closer to the door. I don't think I left a towel in there. Do you need me to bring one in for you? The bathroom was designed with a frosted glass door, making it impossible to see clearly from a distance. Steam clouded the air inside. Hearing her voice, the person inside fell silent. Janine's gentle face flushed. Jason, you don't need to be shy with me. Mama, the little boy from all those years ago had certainly grown up. Hearing her voice right outside the door, Jason quickly grabbed his clothes to cover himself. He was shocked. Why was Professor Hansen out there? And from the sound of it, had she been there for a while? A bad feeling crept over him as he heard her footsteps approaching. Jason, are you okay? She asked, her voice laced with concern. I'm fine, he replied quickly. Professor, you could just leave it by the door. I'll get it myself. Get yourself? Janine's eyebrows rose, a teasing note entering her soft voice. It seems our Jason really has grown up. You've even learned to be shy. She vividly remembered his high school days when he was far less reserved. After a hard practice with the sports team, he and the other boys would often run around the field shirtless. She'd bring him food, and her eyes would linger on him. The clueless boy back then hadn't thought anything of it. Professor, I was just a dumb kid back then. Please don't make fun of me, Jason said, his face burning with remembered embarrassment. Janine chuckled. No need to be shy. It's cold out, and you're just in the rain. I don't want you getting sick. I'll bring it in for you. As she spoke, she reached for the door handle. Jason's eyes widened as he saw the door begin to open. He was about to protest when the doorbell rang again. Ding dong. The sharp sound made Janine pause, her brow furrowing as she glanced toward the front of the house. Who now? Who is it? She asked a nearby maid, her voice clipped with annoyance. The maid checked the security monitor. A stunning, fiercely beautiful face filled the screen. Professor Hansen, I think. It's that Miss Lynn, the student you used to tutor at the old Sterling family mansion. Crash. Useless garbage. Victor Sterling roared, smashing a teacup on the floor. The servants flinched. Behind him, several gaudily dressed women shrank back in fear. Their allowance was 2 months late. If he didn't pay up soon, they'd be finding a new benefactor. Victor sensed their unease and shot them a venomous look. Get out. All of you get out. A bunch of money-grubbing whores. As the women fled, he collapsed onto the sofa, his face a mask of fury. That idiot Robert Miller. He got scared out of his mind, just like that. Useless. Absolutely useless. And he thought he could work with Mr. G. A complete waste of my money. Darling, don't be so angry, a woman in her 40s, draped in designer clothes, said as she descended the stairs. The most important thing now is to get Evan bailed out. As for Robert, who cares? Jason Miller has run away. Knowing that little bitch Clara's personality, she'll probably kill him herself when she finds him. All we have to do is sit back and wait. Victor's expression softened slightly. If all else fails, I'll try to connect with that Mr. G at the upcoming auction. We can offer him a fifth of the Sterling assets to get rid of that damn girl, Clara. Then, I swear, our only son will inherit everything. He patted the woman's hand, a look of sincerity on his face. He didn't notice the flicker of guilt that crossed her expression. Almost there, she thought. I just have to keep it a secret. I can't let this old fool find out Evan isn't his son. As soon as we get the inheritance, I'm taking my son to meet his real father. At the suburban villa. Why isn't anyone opening the door? Brooklyn paced impatiently while several bodyguards nervously held umbrellas over her head. They were terrified she was about to snap and tear them to shreds. Their fears were justified. After 2 minutes of waiting in the cold, her patience had worn thin. She scanned the property. There were only 2 cars in the driveway, likely Janine's. The SUV Jason had been driving was nowhere in sight. Could he really not be here? Inside, Janine's face fell when the maid identified the visitor. What is she doing here? She muttered, waving a dismissive hand. Tell her I'm not home. Have her come back another day. She'd heard about what happened between Brooke and Jason. They had broken up over a month ago. Surely Brooke wasn't here looking for him? That made her even less inclined to open the door. Yes, ma'am. The maid turned to leave, but just then, the gate was kicked open with a loud bang. The maid jumped. Professor, I think Miss Lynn is letting herself in. What? Janine's face darkened. She looked up to see Brooke storming toward the main house. A storm cloud passed over her features. That girl had clearly been spoiled rotten by the Lynn family. Barging in like this, with absolutely no respect for her former teacher. Jason, when you're done, go rest in the guest room. I have company, so don't come out just yet, Janine said, deliberately leaving the towel outside the bathroom door with a lingering look before heading to the main hall to intercept her uninvited guest. She was doing it on purpose. She had no intention of letting Jason and Brooke meet. Inside the bathroom, Jason hadn't heard the maid's words. He only heard that someone had arrived and that Janine's tone had changed. He breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God she hadn't come in. But a second later, as he opened the door to grab the towel, his relief vanished. He heard a familiar voice from the main hall. Professor Hansen, long time no see. Taking this long to open the door. You wouldn't happen to be hiding someone, would you? The moment Brooke Lynn's voice echoed through the hall, Jason's eyes widened, and he ducked back in the bathroom. Her? How did that psycho peacock find me here? He had just escaped, and she was already on his tail. Did she have a tracking dog for a nose? To make matters worse, the bathroom was located right at the turn of the staircase leading to the second floor. If Brooke came upstairs, she would run right into him, and his clothes were still sitting outside the door. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Downstairs, Brooke's eyes swept over Janine's outfit, narrowing in suspicion. Professor, you have a date tonight? Even in her agitated state, Brooke noticed something was different about Janine. The woman was a dedicated academic who was practically blind without her thick, black-framed glasses. Her usual style was frumpy and conservative. But right now, she was dressed in a stunning, form-fitting white sweater that clung to her mature, perfect curves in a way that made Brooke feel a pang of insecurity. Oh, Brooke, you're too kind. It's actually my husband's and my wedding anniversary, Janine replied with a small laugh, though her eyes darted toward the bathroom. Jason was still in there. Her heart pounded. Upstairs, hidden in a corner, Leland Lynn watched the scene, gritting his teeth. Wedding anniversary? My ass. His eyes flickered between the bathroom door and the women below, his hatred growing. He could see it clearly now. That bitch was terrified Brooke would find Jason. An evil plan began to form in his mind. Downstairs, Brooke was skeptical. Wedding anniversary? With all this food? She glanced at the table, which was loaded almost exclusively with seafood and conspicuously lacked a bottle of wine. It looked less like a romantic dinner and more like a feast for one specific person. According to her intel, seafood was Jason's favorite. It's all for my husband, Janine insisted, but Brooke's suspicion was already solidifying. Is that so? As I recall, your husband is the eldest son of the other Lynn family, Leland Lynn, right? The one rumored to have issues in that department? Since I'm here, why don't you introduce me? Brooke's red lips curved into a smirk, her tone dripping with disdain as she started for the stairs. Upstairs, Leland flinched as if struck. He wanted to storm down and throttle her for throwing his deepest shame in his face. But he was a coward, terrified of the Lynn family's power. Janine's gaze turned cold. Brooke, today is my anniversary. Must you insist on disturbing us? She had waited so long to see Jason again. Why did Brooke have to show up now? Her resistance only made Brooke more certain. Professor, I'm just going upstairs to say hello. No need to be so dramatic. She fixed her sharp eyes on Janine and pushed past her toward the staircase. As she neared the landing, Jason's heart leaped into his throat. Ding dong, another sharp ring of the doorbell stopped everyone in their tracks. Even Jason was momentarily baffled. Was there a convention in the suburbs tonight? Why was everyone showing up here? Brooke's attention was diverted, and Jason prepared to make a quiet escape. But his hope was shattered by the voice of the newcomer. Well, Professor Hanson, this is quite a party. I didn't expect to see you here, Miss Lynn. Clara Sterling, clad in her black trench coat and heels, strode into the villa, her presence instantly lowering the temperature of the room. Her cold, sharp eyes scanned the hall, finally landing on a half-eaten meal on the dining table. A dangerous light flickered in her eyes. That was Jason's kind of meal. He was here. Janine and Brooke stood frozen. You followed me? Brooke was the first to react, her face hardening. Clara smiled faintly. You're not as dumb as you look. I thought your head was filled with nothing but Jason Miller. You. Brooke flushed. Huh, as if yours isn't. I wonder which old woman keeps a man imprisoned against his will, forcing him to stay when he's clearly in love with me. She retorted, her chin held high. Who are you calling an old woman? The insult hit a nerve. Murderous intent flashed in Clara's eyes. Brooke didn't back down. If the shoe fits. Surely Miss Sterling wouldn't take it personally. Standing to the side, Janine listened as their argument veered toward the topic of old woman, and her serene face became a kaleidoscope of colors. Old woman. If Clara was an old woman, what did that make her? A fossil? That Brooklyn truly was a mad dog. She had managed to insult two people with one sentence. Miss Sterling, Miss Lynn, did you come all this way just to argue in my home? Janine, though gentle by nature, had her limits. Her voice was ice. The ceasefire was temporary. Professor, let's stop playing games. I'm here for Jason. He's here, isn't he? Brooke said, her tone certain. Clara's brow furrowed. Professor Hanson, you know Jason? She squinted, a coldness seeping into her gaze. She hadn't realized he had so many female acquaintances in the city, especially a woman like Janine. Clara's eyes drifted over Janine's figure. Even she had to admit, the woman's age gave her a mature, sensual appeal that she and Brooke lacked. It made them both feel insecure. What in the world did this woman eat? Clara and Brooke's gazes lingered on Janine's impressive figure, a mixture of curiosity and suspicion in their eyes. Janine felt their stares, and her face hardened. Miss Sterling, Miss Lynn, Jason is not here. Please leave. She lied without batting an eye and gestured toward the door. Upstairs, Jason wanted to applaud. He had assumed his teacher would unwittingly give him up, but she was covering for him. She truly understood him. However, Clara and Brooke were not so easily dismissed. Professor, my apologies for my earlier behavior, Clara said, shifting her strategy. I happen to be in the area and have some business matters I'd like to discuss with you. I hope you don't mind if I stay for a bite to eat. Without waiting for an answer, she took a seat at the dining table. Not to be outdone, Brooke immediately sat down opposite her. Yes, Professor. I came all this way to see you. You made so much delicious food. Don't be in such a hurry to kick us out. They acted as if they owned the place. A dark look crossed Janine's face. Her family wasn't a major power player in the city, but the groundbreaking research she controlled made her indispensable to people like them. It was the only reason they showed her any respect. But watching them eat the meal she had painstakingly prepared for Jason, The fresh seafood she'd driven miles to buy and spent hours cooking ignited a quiet fury within her. "Fine. Make yourselves at home," she said, her smile tight. She excused herself to the kitchen and made a quick phone call. "Yes, that Sterling family research project. I need you to create a problem. The sooner, the better. Tonight." No one was going to ruin her reunion with Jason. Returning to the dining room, a cold smile on her lips, she found Clara and Brooke exchanging a wary glance. They both sensed something was off. "Professor, you said you know Jason? How?" Clara asked, her eyes sharp. A rare, genuine warmth appeared on Janine's face. "Actually, I've known Jason much longer than Brooke has. I was his temporary teacher his sophomore year of high school. I know he had a difficult childhood, living with his uncle. But Jason, he's a good boy. He used to help me with things like unclogging the drains in the school dorms." She seemed to drift off into a fond memory, a blush coloring her cheeks. The atmosphere at the table grew thick with tension. Clara and Brooke exchanged another look, this one filled with a shared sense of crisis. There was something very wrong with the way Janine was talking. Janine noticed their expressions, a subtle smile playing on her lips. "Forgive me. I imagine two wealthy heiresses like yourselves can't understand what it's like to go hungry. Jason and I, we're the same kind of people. We understand each other's struggles." She gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, every movement exuding a mature, feminine grace. She deliberately emphasized the phrases "the same kind of people" and "understand each other." The faces of Clara and Brooke darkened. What did she mean? They couldn't understand. Was she implying that only she truly knew Jason? A shocking thought occurred to both of them simultaneously. This old woman is after Jason too. Janine calmly stirred her coffee, a picture of composure. She knew that Brooke, with her possessive pride, would be furious to hear that her loyal puppy had a history with another woman and would likely drop him for good. As for Clara, while their relationship was unclear, these words would surely sow seeds of doubt. Then Jason would see that only she could offer him unconditional acceptance. Her plan was working perfectly, except for one thing. Brooke, surprisingly, didn't explode. Something was off. Upstairs, Jason could feel the dangerous shift in the atmosphere. It felt like the three women below were about to tear each other apart. It was time to get out. He quietly opened the bathroom door, threw on his clothes, and turned to leave. But Leland Lynn was standing a few feet away, a twisted smile on his face. Jason felt a surge of dread. The next second, Leland let the glass in his hand slip. Crash! The sound shattered the tense silence, drawing the attention of all three women downstairs. Jason's eyes widened. He looked up at Leland's triumphant expression and saw red. That bastard did it on purpose. Downstairs, Clara and Brooke were already looking up. "Professor? Is someone upstairs?" They started for the staircase. Jason glared at Leland, who was turning to walk away. "Get back here," he hissed, grabbing the man's collar. Then, with all his strength, he kicked the bastard square in the back, sending him tumbling down the stairs. Jason's kick was powerful. Leland Lynn rolled down the stairs like a rag doll, landing in a heap at the bottom and effectively blocking Clara and Brooke's path. Jason used the diversion to slip into a nearby guest room and hide behind the curtains. The entire sequence took only a few seconds. Downstairs, Clara and Brooke stared at the crumpled form of Leland, instinctively taking a step back in disgust. Janine was also momentarily stunned. "What happened to you?" she asked, her eyes darting toward the top of the stairs. Seeing no sign of Jason, she breathed a small sigh of relief. Leland, already in poor health, was in no shape to answer. The kick had knocked the wind out of him, and his head had cracked against the floor. His eyes rolled back, and he passed out. "Take him downstairs and patch him up," Janine said, a flicker of disgust in her eyes. "The noise just now, it had to be Leland's doing." Her gaze grew colder. A maid rushed over. "Professor, Mr. Lynn seems badly hurt. Should we call an ambulance?" "He's a useless waste of space. Calling an ambulance would be a waste of resources. It's just a scratch. He won't die," Brooke scoffed from the side. Leland Lynn was a well-known degenerate from a branch of her own family. "If you're so worried, call Kinsey to come take a look at him." Brooke was agitated, her eyes constantly scanning the second floor. She was sure Jason was up there and didn't want to be delayed by this drama. What if he ran again? She pushed past Leland's unconscious body and sprinted up the stairs. Clara, despite her aversion to the bloodstains on the floor, followed right behind her. Janine's heart sank. She hurried after them. "This is highly inappropriate. I don't recall giving either of you permission to come up here." But it was too late. They had already reached the landing and spotted the shattered glass. "What's this?" Brooke, for once, was paying attention to the details. She saw a trail of wet footprints leading from the glass to a single guest room. Professor, those look like a man's footprints, don't they? She turned and gave Janine a long, knowing look. Clara saw the footprints too, and her beautiful face turned to ice. Janine was speechless. Before she could say another word, the two women were heading for the guest room. Inside, Jason heard their footsteps approaching. His heart hammered against his ribs as he pressed himself deeper into the curtains. He'd been in such a hurry, he forgot to wipe his tracks. He frantically looked around for an escape route. The door handle turned. His eyes darted to the only other exit. The window. It's now or never. The moment the door opened, Jason slipped out the window. Brooke and Clara entered the room. Nobody? How is that possible? Brooke looked around the empty room, her face a mask of disbelief. Clara's cold gaze went straight to the open window. Rain was still falling outside. Jason, wearing only a thin sweater, was pressed against the building, balancing precariously on the narrow ledge that housed the air conditioning unit. Clara noticed a faint smudge on the windowsill. She started toward the window. "Madam," Ava's urgent voice came from downstairs. "Madam, we've found news of the master. Also, there's a problem at the factory for our new tech project. Should we go find a master or head to the factory?" Clara froze. "You found him?" Her brow furrowed. Could Janine have been telling the truth? Was Jason really not here? "Well, now that you've seen for yourselves, can you please leave?" Janine said, adopting an annoyed tone. Clara looked at Ava, then back at the empty room. She made a decision. My apologies for the intrusion. Compared to Brooke's baseless speculation, she trusted her team's intel more. She turned to leave. "But," she whispered to Ava, "have someone watch this house. Report any movement to me." As Clara left, Jason let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. With that demon gone, dealing with the psycho peacock would be easier. "Wait," she said, "they found him." The news had clearly shaken Brooke's resolve. Jason prayed she would follow Clara out. But for the first time, Brooke's stubborn intuition was spot on. She wasn't leaving. "Professor, I apologize for the misunderstanding. But it's late. I hope you don't mind if I stay the night." After a thorough search of the entire villa, she still hadn't found Jason, but she refused to give up. Her gut told her he was here, and Janine's strange behavior only confirmed it. She would stay until he was forced to show himself. Janine was aghast. "Brooke, I think it's best if you go. I'm tired." But Brooke simply activated her spoiled heiress mode, ignoring the request entirely. A team of her bodyguards began hauling luggage into the villa. "Don't worry about me, Professor. I don't need you to host. I'll find a room myself." She began opening doors, pretending to look for a room, but secretly searching for Jason. Outside, shivering in the wind and rain, Jason felt his sanity slipping. When had the girl with the 3-minute attention span become so damn persistent? Was she possessed? As Clara's Maybach pulled away, a black sedan materialized in its wake. Inside, Bianca Sterling's angelic face was shrouded in shadow, her doe-like eyes fixed on the taillights, vanishing into the distance. "Brother, is that really you?" she murmured, her voice a fragile whisper. She was gripping her own hands so tightly that her nails had drawn blood in her palm. Her phone buzzed, breaking the spell. Bianca's gaze shifted as she answered. A man's voice came through the line. "Ma'am, we have the complete file on Jason Miller, just as you requested." "Report," Bianca said, her voice a soft, chilling monotone as she idly examined her perfect fingernails. Even over the phone, the man flinched. "Jason Miller. At age 5, his parents died in an accident. He was sent to an orphanage. Records indicate he was close with a female friend there, but she was later adopted by a family overseas. He was then transferred to the same prep school you attended, where you met. Later, his uncle, Robert Miller, influenced by the New York media frenzy surrounding the family, brought him back from the countryside his sophomore year of high school. Jason's life spiraled. He gained a reputation as a trust fund failure, a useless rich kid, a simp. He chased after a lot of girls, but the only one he ever officially dated was Brooklyn. The man recited the details, but Bianca's patience was wearing thin. There were inconsistencies, but she didn't care about those right now. A dark suspicion was already solidifying in her mind. She had believed her brother was just like her, a pawn, discarded in some forgotten corner of the world. But it turned out he had another life entirely. "Get to the point," Bianca hissed, her voice laced with ice. The man broke into a cold sweat. "Ma'am, you want to know about his relationship with Clara Sterling?" He paused. "We did find something on that. It appears that Jason Miller and Clara Sterling recently entered into a contractual marriage, and they've had the ceremony and a wedding night." His voice trailed off into a whisper, but it was loud enough. The murderous aura radiating from Bianca thickened, turning the air in the car cold. Her eyes bled into a deep, furious crimson. Crack! The phone shattered against the dashboard. Bianca's beautiful features twisted into a mask of dark, violent rage. Why? It had only been a few short years. She had been certain he was waiting for her. She had fought tooth and nail, clawed her way to this position, all for him. And now he was her aunt's husband. Why? Did he ever feel anything real for her at all? And she, like a fool, had gone looking for him the second she returned. Brother, you broke my heart, Bianca whispered, biting her lip so hard that the coppery taste of blood filled her mouth. A savage, bloodthirsty grin spread across her face. Looking in the direction Clara had gone, a single, pure impulse rose within her. Kill her. It was the same possessive instinct that had flared up that first year of high school. It was in her blood, in her bones. Every cell in her body was screaming it. Clara, why? Why do you always have to take what's mine? Bianca shrieked, the raw killing intent boiling around her. She could have given up anything else. Before she came back to the States, she had almost made peace with it all. She'd resented Clara, sure. Resented that when she was at her lowest, Clara hadn't offered a hand, only the cold advice that she had to fight to earn a place by her side. It was resentment, but it hadn't yet curdled into hate. But now she had finally escaped that predatory family, that living hell, and reached for her light, her brother. And Clara Sterling had simply snatched away the one thing she had craved for half her life. She wouldn't stand for it. She wouldn't let anyone take her brother away. Ma'am, your medication. The two bodyguards in the front seat were trembling. They saw the blood-red glaze in her eyes and knew her condition was flaring up again. They scrambled to offer her the pills. But in the next second, Bianca lunged forward. She violently ripped both men from the car and threw herself into the driver's seat. The engine roared. With a stomp on the accelerator, the black sedan shot forward, screaming down the road in pursuit of Clara's car. The two bodyguards stared, their faces white with terror. Contact HQ, one yelled. Asset 032 is having a psychotic break. Requesting immediate support. Author's note. Bianca's power base isn't limited to the Sterling family. She wouldn't have been able to escape her past without external help, which is how she has the resources to investigate Clara. But this story won't get bogged down in convoluted business warfare. It's a romance. This is just to explain how Bianca has her own capabilities and that there is a deep-seated misunderstanding between her and Clara. And no, Bianca is not cured. Back at the villa. Jason, are you okay? Here, wrap this around you. You must be freezing. The moment Brooke disappeared into another room, Hannah Chun found Jason, ushered him into her own bedroom, and anxiously wrapped a thick blanket around his shoulders. Thanks, Professor. I'm fine, Jason said, though his lips were turning a distinct shade of purple. God, I can't take another day of this, he thought. He should have just gone with Sprite to her dorm. A girl's dorm sounded like heaven compared to this. But Clara had said they'd found him. How? Did she track him to Sprite's place? Anxious, Jason pressed the chip behind his ear. Sprite, you good? Clara didn't find you, did she? This time, there was no instant reply. A knot of dread tightened in his stomach. Just then, the door creaked open and Brooke sauntered back in. Professor Chun, who are you talking to? Brooke asked, her eyes scanning the room. Jason's heart leaped into his throat. Before he could react, Hannah moved with lightning speed, shoving him down onto the bed and pulling the thick duvet over him. Then, she slid her own legs under the covers, leaning back against the headboard with a book as if she'd been there all along. What was that? Brooke frowned. She could have sworn she saw a shadow move. One blink and it was gone. Was she seeing things? Under the covers, Jason felt a nosebleed coming on. It was stiflingly hot, and Hannah was pressing him down firmly to keep him hidden. Her long, toned legs were crossed over him, concealing him perfectly while giving him an unfiltered view. His respect and gratitude for Professor Chun grew exponentially. What a woman, sacrificing for her students, for the people. A true hero. He tried to shut his eyes, but his body stubbornly refused to cooperate. Oh, it's just my kitten, Hannah said, her cheeks flushing as she pointed a slightly unsteady finger at an innocent-looking ragdoll cat nearby. A cat. Brooke arched an eyebrow, unconvinced. She glanced from the cat to the suspiciously lumpy duvet. Professor, your bed looks a little crowded. She was sure she had seen Jason. Hannah's face flashed with guilt before hardening into a stern, professorial mask. Brooke, it's the middle of the night. Barging into my room without knocking is highly inappropriate, don't you think? Her cold, authoritative tone worked. Brooke backed down, though she kept glancing back over her shoulder as she left. She couldn't shake the feeling. For some reason, she just knew Jason was here. She just hadn't found him yet. Fine. Time to sleep, Brooke muttered to herself. She marched back to her room, grabbed her own duvet and pillows, then turned right back around. She didn't believe it for a second. The house wasn't that big. Where could Hannah possibly hide him? A game of hide-and-seek? Fine. Brooklyn was going to find him. Inside the bedroom. Phew. As soon as Brooke was gone, Jason was freed. He gulped down fresh air, feeling like he'd almost passed out. Luckily, Brooke was easier to fool than he'd thought. Hannah watched him, a fond smile playing on her lips. Look at you sweating. Now, are you going to tell me why you're hiding from Brooklyn? She gently brushed his sweat-dampened hair off his forehead, the gesture lingering with an ambiguous warmth. Jason shifted uncomfortably. I guess I can't hide anything from you, Professor. He forced a weak smile and edged away slightly. He respected Hannah deeply, but he was still a normal guy. A little distance was necessary. She might see him as a kid, but he was definitely not a kid anymore. Explaining the whole situation with Brooke and Clara was too complicated right now. I'm sorry for the trouble, Professor, but Brooke and I are completely over. As for the details, I'll explain later. I might need to lie low here for a few days. He wiped the sweat from his brow, embarrassed. He didn't see the flicker of heat in Hannah's eyes when he said he'd be staying. My little boy is all grown up, keeping secrets from his teacher now, she said softly. But it's all right. My home will always be a safe harbor for you. She reached out, her hand stroking his cheek, her eyes filled with a fond, almost maternal light. She was completely oblivious to how intimate the gesture was. Jason's face immediately turned crimson. Looking at her smooth, porcelain skin and the gentle curve of her eyes, he felt his throat go dry. Thanks, Professor. I'll just go find a guest room. He scrambled to his feet, but Hannah grabbed his arm. Jason, Brooke is out there looking for you. If you go out now, she'll find you instantly. Her look of concern made him freeze. She was right. What was he supposed to do? A slow smile spread across Hannah's lips. Jason, if you don't mind, you can stay here. In my room. What? Jason's eyes went wide. But there's only one bed. He looked at her gentle face and suddenly felt a prickle of unease. Something was off. Very off. His professor was never like this. He instinctively took a step back. Seeing his alarm, Hannah quickly clarified. You misunderstood. I meant you could sleep on the floor. Jason let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Oh, that's what you meant. You scare me for a second. I thought. You thought what? Hannah's eyes twinkled. Before Jason could answer, there was a sharp knock on the door. Knock, knock. Professor Chun, I'm coming in. Brooke didn't wait for an answer, pushing the door open immediately. Jason's pupils constricted. This time, his reflexes were faster. He executed a perfect slide, diving under the bed just as the door swung open. He found himself face to face with the ragdoll cat, who was calmly munching on its kibble. What was that noise? Brooke asked, looking around in confusion. Hannah's forehead beaded with sweat. Brooklyn, what are you doing back here? She was at her wit's end. The atmosphere between her and Jason had been just right, and this girl had to ruin it. Brooke beamed, a triumphant glint in her eyes. To sleep with you, of course. There's a thunderstorm outside, and I'm scared. You don't mind, do you, Professor? Without waiting for a reply, she tossed her duvet onto the bed and flopped down. Hannah's face darkened. She had never met anyone so shamelessly presumptuous. More importantly, with Brooke in the bed. How was Jason ever going to get out? Get out, Hannah said, her patience completely gone. But Brooke had already turned over, feigning sleep. She wasn't leaving that easily. She was here for Jason, and the angrier Hannah got, the more satisfied Brooke felt. Hannah was helpless. She was tempted to march to her lab, mix up a special glass of milk for the little brat, and be done with it, but she restrained herself. Under the bed, Jason was in agony. Listening to the uneven breathing of the two women above him, he felt like he was going to explode. That woman gave him absolutely no escape. Meanwhile, in the rain-slicked streets, Clara Sterling sat impassively in the back of her Maybach. The car was parked outside the gates of a prestigious university. Ava stopped the car and handed a photograph to the back. Ma'am, this is her. Clara took the photo, her stunningly cold face devoid of expression. The picture showed a young woman with bright, lovely features. The girl in the photo was Sprite. Interesting, Clara breathed, her voice a low, melodic whisper laced with chilling intent. Ava shivered. Ma'am, our intel shows that after Mr. Miller left the Birchwood Forest, he dropped this girl off at the university and then vanished from all surveillance feeds. She paused, her voice dropping. We've also confirmed her identity. Her name is Lucy Miller, alias Sprite. She's a core operative under the direct control of Mr. G from G Corp. Ava's voice grew quieter with every word. She hadn't believed it herself when she dug it up. Jason Miller was supposed to be a nobody, a rich kid failure. How was he connected to G-Corp? And stranger still, this top-tier G-Corp agent shared his last name. What was going on here? Clara ran a thumb over the photograph, her eyes glinting. Jason Miller, you just keep getting more and more surprising. That crimson light returned to her sharp eyes, the excited glow she got when she found a particularly interesting prey. His secrets were piling up, and she was finding it more and more fun. Get out of the car, Clara commanded, her eyes narrowing. Let's go meet this young woman. She wanted to see for herself. Was the boy hiding a lover in a gilded cage, or was this something else entirely? Yes, ma'am. Ava felt a chill run down her spine and reached for the door handle. But just then, something in the rearview mirror caught her eye. A black sedan was hurtling toward them at an impossible speed. Clara saw it too, but her cold, clear eyes remained unervingly calm. What's meant to come always comes, she murmured to herself, a flicker of calculated brilliance in her gaze. She was neither surprised nor afraid, but the faint red veins at the corners of her eyes betrayed a hint of sorrow. They all want me dead, don't they? Well, Jason, look. It seems this party isn't quite big enough. Let's make it bigger. A bloody, bewitching smile stretched across Clara's lips. To catch a fish, you had to offer the right bait. She just wondered if she really died. Would he come to see her? Would he shed a single tear for his contractual wife? With a cold, detached smile, Clara let the photograph of Lucy Miller flutter from her fingertips. Ava didn't understand. Ma'am, look out, she screamed, wrenching the steering wheel hard. But it was too late. Boom! The black sedan slammed into the Maybach with a deafening crash. Ava's vision exploded in a flash of white light. Shards of glass rained into the cabin, and the immense force of the impact made her world go black. In her last moment of clarity, she saw a tiny piece of glass graze Clara's perfect cheek. But Clara was smiling, a tragic, beautiful, and utterly devastating smile as her silken black hair whipped around her. The car was thrown forward several meters before plunging into the icy lake beside the road. Ava lost consciousness, but even then, her final instinct was to shield Clara with her own body. In the black sedan, the impact threw Bianca against the steering wheel. The horn blared, glass shattered, and blood streamed down her forehead. She stared at the spot in the lake where Clara's car had disappeared, her vision blurring. In her last moments of awareness, she felt a surge of hatred. Hatred for her own powerlessness, and a sliver of regret. In the entire Sterling and Sterling-adjacent world, besides her brother, Clara was the only one who had ever truly seen her. She didn't want this, but she couldn't lose her brother. She knew Clara always had security measures in place. Even her cars were custom armored. This crash wouldn't kill her. It would just put her in a coma for a while. Just long enough for Bianca to take her brother and disappear. Don't blame me, Aunt Clara. My brother is all I have. No one could take him from her. Bianca's face was pale, blood trickling onto her lips, but she mumbled on as if possessed. The injuries were too much, and she finally slumped forward against the wheel. Two dark figures immediately emerged from the shadows behind her car. Wearing black rubber gloves, they pulled her from the wreckage. Both wore masks. As they moved, the skin on their wrists was briefly exposed, revealing tattooed strings of numbers, 33 and 34. At the same time, on a service road behind the university, several men in a nondescript black car watched the scene unfold, their faces masks of sheer confusion. What the hell? Competition. I thought we got the $5 million contract to take out Clara Sterling. Who the hell is this, stealing our kill? One of the masked men exclaimed. Boss, what's going on? Someone swooped in on our job. Another asked, bewildered. Maybe we should call Victor Sterling? See if they're on our team. He started to pull out his phone. The first man slapped his hand down. Don't you dare. That was obviously a hostile takeover. Look, we already got the $2.5 million down payment. If we tell Victor we didn't do it, we won't get the rest of the money. The man felt a surge of genius-level intellect. His subordinate looked at him with newfound admiration. Brilliant. Boss, you're a genius. So we take the money and run. The first man nodded. With a quick agreement, they started the car and peeled out. Meanwhile, the rest of Clara's motorcade was in chaos. Bodyguards reacted instantly, diving into the lake to rescue her. But when they kicked open the door of the black sedan, Bianca was gone. Even the blood on the steering will have been wiped clean. The lead guard's face grew grim. Get DR. Lou on the line now. The boss's vitals are unstable, and this could trigger her condition. As for the perpetrator, secure the evidence. The boss will decide what to do when she wakes up. He quickly dialed DR. Luo's number. DR. Luo. who had been studying herbal remedies, was shocked by the call. Someone in New York City was actually able to hurt Miss Sterling? His face showed surprise, but a seed of suspicion was planted. He had heard rumors all afternoon that Clara's contractual husband had run away. And the very next day, the ever-cautious Clara gets into an accident. It was likely the heiress had been so focused on Jason Miller lately that she'd let her own security slip, giving someone an opening. Young people, they all have to suffer the trials of love. Luo sighed. Get Miss Sterling to the hospital. I'll be right there. He hung up the phone, his eyes flicking toward his office door. Young lady, if you don't come out now, I'm leaving without you. Kinsey Luo, who had been eavesdropping, quickly emerged. Wait, Grandpa, please, take me with you, she pleaded, her face looking haggard. She'd been secretly searching for Jason ever since he disappeared, but there had been no trace. She heard Brooke had gone to the suburbs, but refused to tell her where. She had wanted to check it out herself, but then the news about Clara broke. Sigh, I'm getting too old for this. If you want to come, then go get the medical bag. Unable to resist her pleas, Dr. Luo relented, and they left for the hospital together. But a worry gnawed at him. Kinsey was getting far too invested in that boy. He wanted to warn her, but he knew it was useless. He'd been through the same thing himself, long ago. All he could do was let her find her own way. As they left, the news of Clara Sterling's car crash spread through New York City like wildfire. It wasn't that the Sterling security was incompetent. The crash was simply too loud, too public, right outside a major university, teeming with students. There was no containing it. In her dorm room, Sprite, engrossed in a video game, heard the commotion. When she saw the car being pulled from the lake, a Maybach with the custom plate Sterl 1NG, her pupils shrank. Isn't that the devil woman's car? Sprite dropped her bag of chips and rushed to the window. Her dorm room had a perfect view of the road. Below, the scene was chaos. Police cruisers, their red and blue lights flashing, had cordoned off the area. An ambulance was parked nearby. She watched as Clara, her face a deathly, bloodless white, was lifted onto a stretcher. She looked completely lifeless. Ava, her eyes red and frantic, tried desperately to follow her. It seemed Ava had regained consciousness after being pulled from the lake and wasn't seriously injured. Clara, on the other hand, looked terrible. The paramedics finally relented and let Ava into the ambulance, which sped away, sirens wailing. Sprite frowned. It really was the devil woman. Who would have thought she'd ever be on the receiving end of a plot like this? And why did it have to happen right outside her university? Had Clara already found out about her? Jason, your sort of wife just got into a car crash, Sprite said, deciding to activate her communication chip with him after a moment's hesitation. Meanwhile, Jason, dozing under Hannah Chen's bed, snapped awake. What did you say? He whispered, his brow furrowing. He couldn't believe it. He must have misheard. Sprite's voice was grim. Clara Sterling. She was just in a car wreck right outside my school. It looks like someone hit her on purpose. Outside your school? Jason's heart skipped a beat. A terrible premonition washed over him. Why would Clara be at Sprite's university for no reason? He remembered what Ava had said at Hannah's house about finding a lead on him. Had the devil woman figured out who he was? His heart hammered in his chest. He debated sneaking out to check on her at the hospital when he heard Hannah and Brooke start talking upstairs. Professor Chun, you're not going to the G Corp bidding conference tomorrow night, are you? Brooke asked suddenly. Hannah paused. Why do you ask? Although she was Brooke's tutor, Brooke hadn't shown up for a single lesson in 2 years, always sending stand-in. They barely knew each other. Brooke just smiled. Nothing. I just heard that, Mr. G himself will be there. He's the new rising star on the scene. Haven't you ever considered partnering with him? Though G Corp was new to the New York scene, anyone with eyes could see the newcomer capable of snatching deals from both the Sterling and Lin families was not to be underestimated. I imagine every major player in the city is watching them, Brooke said dismissively. She didn't want to think about it, but Mr. Lee kept nagging her. If someone in New York could partner with G Corp, they might just have the momentum to rise to the same level as the Sterlings and the Lins. Still, she couldn't care less about Mr. G. He was so secretive, hiding behind a mask. It was boring. Her family wanted her to pursue a marriage alliance with him in their dreams. Brooke puffed her cheeks and hugged a pillow, sulking. Her mind was filled with images of Jason. She didn't want to think about business deals. She just wanted to find that boy and teach him a lesson for playing her. Hannah watched her with a strange expression. Brooke, why are you reacting so strongly? Under the bed, Jason listened and put the pieces together. According to Brooke, G Corp was the hottest ticket in town. Since the Sterling family was the biggest player, everyone assumed G Corp would partner with Clara. So, Did someone attack Clara to take her out of the picture, hoping to swoop in and steal the G-Corp deal? It seemed incredibly risky. If the attempt failed, they would face the full force of Clara Sterling's wrath. As Jason mulled it over, a frantic knocking echoed from the bedroom door. Bang, bang, bang. Miss Lynn, you need to come out here. It was Mr. Lee's voice, sharp with anger and panic. I'm sleeping, Brooke grumbled, rolling over. Mr. Lee grew more urgent. Miss Lynn, you were too reckless. Even if you despise Clara Sterling, you should have thought about the Lynn family. If she wakes up and finds out what you've done, do you have any idea what the consequences will be? He pounded on the door, his usual composure gone. His words made both Hannah and Brooke sit bolt upright. Under the bed, Jason froze. What? The person who attacked Clara was Brooke? That crazy peacock? Did she have the cunning to outmaneuver Clara? He found it hard to believe. What are you talking about? The door flew open, revealing a bewildered Brooke. You're saying something happened to Clara? What happened? Brooke was completely lost. She hadn't done anything. She hadn't even eaten dinner. How was Clara's accident suddenly her fault? Hannah stood behind her in her pajamas, frowning. For a moment, Mr. Lee was struck by the sight of the two of them together. The mature, languid professor and the fiery, youthful heiress. They looked surprisingly compatible. When did they get so close they were sleeping in the same room? What are you staring at? Brooke snapped, her face flushing. Mr. Lee coughed, returning to the matter at hand, though he was still confused. Miss, it wasn't you. But who else in New York had both the motive and the means to hurt Clara? Seeing his skeptical gaze, Brooke grew even more furious. Do I look like a liar? I'm not some low-life schemer. When Brooklyn does something, she does it with flair, and she makes sure the whole damn city knows it was her. The fact that she was being framed was infuriating. But how is that possible? When did Clara ever let her guard down like this? Mr. Lee was more confused than ever. Looking at Brooke's defiant face, he finally conceded. Miss, even if it wasn't you, you should go to the hospital. You don't want the tabloids running with this. Besides, Clara is seriously injured. My sources say she's in the ICU. Mr. Lee, his face grim, had an assistant bring Brooke a change of clothes. Both Brooke and Hannah stared, their eyes wide. What did you say? She's in the ICU. It was that serious? Brooke had imagined a few scratches, maybe a broken bone. Her pretty face was a knot of confusion. She had known for a while that Clara's health was failing, but this was too sudden. Her feelings were a tangled mess. Honestly, a part of her wanted Clara gone. It would nullify the marriage contract with Jason, and she wouldn't have to compete anymore. And while the Lynn and Sterling families maintained a public truce, she and Clara had been rivals for years. But hearing that she might actually die, Brooke felt a strange numbness. Was it really going to end this easily? Hannah, however, heard the news with a different thought in mind. Brooke, since Miss Sterling's condition is critical, you should go see her. Don't waste any more time here. As she spoke, Hannah started pushing Brooke toward the door, a triumphant glint in her eyes. Finally, this crazy girl is leaving. She had been wanting to ask Jason about the past 2 years, about that love letter. Brooke was in the way. What do you think you're doing? Brooke's eyes narrowed, seeing right through her. Professor, your family has ties to the Sterlings. You have to come with me. I'm scared of blood and the thunder. You have to come. She grabbed Hannah's arm and started dragging her out of the house, gritting her teeth. She knew it. The woman was desperate to get rid of her. Jason had to be in the house. There was no way she was letting Hannah stay here alone. She just used the opportunity to move him. Brooklyn, you... Hannah was speechless with rage. She had heard the rumors about Brooke being the most spoiled, willful brat in New York, and now she believed them. Scared of blood? Hannah distinctly remembered tutoring her years ago when Brooke, to get out of doing her homework, had stabbed her own hand with a compass. Not even a dog would believe she was scared of blood. Hannah tried to resist, but from under the bed, Jason shot her a pleading look. With a sigh of defeat, Hannah let herself be dragged out of the villa and into a car heading for the hospital. Only then did Jason finally crawl out from under the bed. I almost suffocated, he muttered, pulling out the burner phone Sprite had given him. For the past few days, Clara's voice and face had been replaying in his mind. And that simple meal she'd made. An unfamiliar irritation pricked at him. Was that woman really going to die, just like that? Didn't she know how to take care of herself? Jason ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. After a moment of hesitation, he sent a text to Hannah. Professor, keep Brooke busy at the hospital. I think I'm going to head over there, too. He would go in disguise, of course. He was still furious about how she treated him, but the woman was on her deathbed. The least he could do was check on her. Besides, he had a gut feeling that Clara wouldn't go down this easily. She hadn't survived this long in New York by being careless. He had to see for himself what was really going on. and he needed to investigate the possibility that she'd discovered Sprite. With that thought, Jason changed into a set of clothes Hannah had left for him. He went downstairs, grabbed the keys to Wesley Chin's BMW off the counter, and headed for the door. Borrowing this, he called out politely. Wesley, who was bandaging his wounds, saw this, and his eyes rolled back in his head as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Come, back here. First, the guy eats his food, and now he's stealing his car? The audacity, even if he'd only bought the BMW by leveraging Hannah's reputation. He couldn't let this slide. Call my dad. You get back here, you little punk. Do you know who my dad is? Wesley roared. Jason paused. Who's your dad? He frowned. He wasn't an unreasonable person. If he couldn't borrow the car, fine. But threats? He hated threats. Seeing him stop, Wesley's bravado deflated. My father is Walter Chun. Jason almost laughed. I thought it was someone important. Tell your dad to come find me. As for the BMW, gas is on me. He magnanimously pulled out $500 bills and slapped them on Wesley's face. He paused, then took 2 of them back. 300 should be enough. He could act generous, but he still had to be frugal. He knew what it was like to be poor. Keep the change, Jason said, then grabbed the keys and walked out, pressing the chip behind his ear. Sprite, check the partner files for the last couple of days. Is there a Walter Chin in there? Right? Permanent blacklist. He wasn't petty. He was just vengeful. That idiot almost got him caught by Clara. An eye for an eye. At the old Sterling family mansion. Damn it, where are those 2 morons? Why haven't I heard anything? Victor Sterling paced his living room, frantically dialing a number that kept going to voicemail. He was starting to panic. They didn't screw it up, did they? Victor was afraid. He knew how ruthless Clara could be, which is why he'd only ordered them to rough her up a bit. With her fragile health, a little fender bender would put her in bed for weeks. That would give him the opening he needed to represent the Sterling family at the G-Corp meeting tomorrow. He never expected his hired guns to be so unreliable. His down payment. Just as he was lamenting his lost money, his mistress burst into the room, beaming. Darling, it's wonderful news. That little bitch Clara is in the ICU. Victor froze. What? She's in the ICU? Could it be? Were his mercs actually that competent? They'd nearly killed her without even getting the final payment. Yes, darling. You did it. I knew you still had it in you. Just as strong and virile as ever. The woman cooed, pressing herself against him. With that bitch gone, control of a Sterling fortune would fall to this old fool. She had to play her cards right. Victor, who hadn't been complimented on his virility in years, puffed out his chest, filled with a renewed sense of power. I did it. I actually did it. He thought that damn girl was so clever. Turns out, all it took was 2 hired thugs. He felt like a king. At Midtown General Hospital, outside the ICU, the hallway was lined with stone-faced bodyguards. The air was thick with a heavy, oppressive silence. Anyone passing by hurried on, not daring to linger. Ava stood numbly by the doors, her face pale, her eyes vacant. It's all my fault. I didn't protect her. It's all my fault, she murmured, her eyes red and raw. A woman in a mask stood beside her, arms crossed, her expression cold. It was the ghost. She placed a comforting hand on Ava's shoulder. Just then, the elevator doors opened, and Brooklyn and Hannah Chun rushed out, their own security detail in tow. What's the situation? Brooke demanded, her gaze flicking from the closed ICU doors to Ava. The moment Ava saw her, her eyes flared with crimson fury. What are you doing here? She snarled, stepping forward to block Brooke's path. Her team investigating the crash hadn't reported back yet, which meant the culprit was covering their tracks well. And who else in New York had the power to do that besides Brooklyn? Victor and his cronies didn't have the competence to touch Clara. Brooke had attacked her boss, and now she had the gall to show up and gloat. Ava, I came here out of concern, and you're accusing me. Brooke bristled, her own temper flaring. She hadn't done a thing, and everyone was pointing the finger at her. Do you actually believe that yourself, Miss Lynn? Ava shot back, refusing to move an inch. You. Brooke was about to explode when a doctor emerged from the ICU. Ladies, please, no shouting outside the ICU. Family needs to come sign the paperwork. Everyone else, please step back. Ava fell silent. Family? Did her boss have any family left in this world? Her father wanted her dead. Her husband couldn't wait to escape. Her only niece was still young and distant. A wave of despair washed over her. Doctor, how is she? She has no family. Can I sign? The situation is not good, the doctor said, his brow furrowed. You need to get DR. Luo here immediately. As if on cue, a voice called out from down the hall. Make way, make way. Let an old man through. DR. Luo appeared, carrying 2 medical cases, with Kinsey trailing behind him. The crowd parted. "Dr. Luo, thank God you're here. Please, you have to help," the doctor said, his tone instantly deferential as he led him into the ICU. Kinsey tried to follow, but Brooke grabbed her arm. "Kinsey, is Clara really critical?" She still couldn't believe it. She hadn't done anything. Who else could have done this? Kinsey just gave her a long, hard look. "Brooke, you went too far this time." Clearly, she didn't believe her either. "What? You too?" Brooke felt like she was going to explode. Surrounded by accusatory glares, she was losing her mind. "Fine. You all think it was me? Then investigate. Find the person who did this to that old woman. I want them found." She was going to drag whoever framed her into the light and tear them to pieces. "Yes, ma'am." Several of her bodyguards, seeing their boss on the verge of a breakdown, practically fled to carry out her orders. Ava and the others sat down, but their eyes never left Brooke, watching her as if she were a bomb about to go off. Hannah stood back, observing everything, her eyes narrowed. Why were Clara's people so suspicious of Brooke? Yes, they were rivals, but would Brooke really resort to something like this? Had some new conflict erupted between them that she didn't know about? Her phone vibrated with a new message. She glanced at it, and her eyes lit up for a second. It was from Jason, but as she read the message, her face fell. "Professor Chun, how is Clara doing?" Clara? Jason knew Clara Sterling? Recalling the sparks flying between Clara and Brooke earlier, she had a very bad feeling. "Jason, how do you know Miss Sterling?" Hannah typed back, her eyes sharp. In his car, Jason froze. He'd forgotten. His professor didn't know about him and Clara, but explaining the contractual marriage was difficult. We met by chance. The Miller and Sterling families had some business dealings. I was just asking." "Professor, that's not important. How is she?" He typed out a clumsy excuse, desperate to change the subject. But Hannah sensed something was wrong. Why was he so concerned about a mere business associate? Something wasn't adding up. Finally, she replied, "Her condition is not good. Dr. Luo is with her now. We're all right outside the ICU. Are you coming?" Jason was already parked outside the hospital, but he chose his words carefully. "No, I'll stay away for now. You all take care." Hannah put her phone away, a strange feeling settling in her stomach. Jason, meanwhile, was already striding into the hospital. He pressed the chip behind his ear. "Sprite, pull up all the surveillance footage from the area around the crash. Find out who was really behind this." He knew this wasn't as simple as it looked. "Roger that," Sprite replied. Jason walked into a supply closet, grabbed a set of scrubs, a surgical mask, and a cap, and headed for the ICU. He suspected Clara wasn't as hurt as they were saying. Even if she was, he had to see it with his own eyes. Fully disguised, he blended in with the hospital staff. No one at the ICU entrance recognized him. Their attention was elsewhere, specifically on Hannah. Brooke watched her texting in the corner, her suspicion growing. "Professor, what are you hiding?" she asked, suddenly appearing at Hannah's side. Hannah jumped. "What are you doing? Was this woman a ghost?" She hadn't heard a thing. Brooke looked innocent. "Why so jumpy? If you don't want me to see, just say so. Definitely hiding something." "You." Hannah was about to lose her temper when a swarm of reporters flooded the hallway, surrounding a single figure at the center. It was Victor Sterling. "Rest assured, everyone, I will get to the bottom of this. I will not let what happened to my daughter go unpunished." Victor Sterling stood among the reporters, a mask of righteous fury on his face, puffing out his chest like a rooster that had just won a cockfight. Ava, Brooke, and the others watched him with open contempt. The man was practically grinning from ear to ear, yet he was still putting on this pathetic show. Brooke, in particular, was now convinced the old bastard was behind the whole thing. The reporters, oblivious, pressed in. "Mr. Sterling, if Miss Sterling doesn't recover, what will happen to Sterling Industries? Who will take over the family leadership in her absence?" They were really asking if the Sterling stock would tank with a new, incompetent leader at the helm. But Victor heard only what he wanted to hear. "Everyone, rest assured, even if my daughter is gone, I am more than capable of leading the Sterling family," he boomed, thumping his chest. The reporters exchanged glances. One of them turned to his cameraman and muttered into his microphone, "Get this to the news desk. Message is, with Miss Sterling out, expect Sterling Industries stock to crash. No, it might hit an all-time low. Advise all investors to sell immediately." Victor's face fell. He wanted to lash out, but the cameras were still on him. Brooke laughed out loud. "You old fool. You really think you're somebody without Clara, don't you? You're a joke with an underdeveloped brain." As much as she disliked Clara, she was the only person in New York whose business acumen she truly respected. Clara's skills were legendary. Without her, the Sharks would tear the Sterling empire apart in days. While chaos reigned in the hallway, inside the operating room, it was a different world. Monitors beeped softly. On the surgical bed lay a woman so beautiful she seemed sculpted from porcelain. Her skin was pale, her long, dark lashes trembling slightly. A few streaks of blood marred her snow-white cheek, but even closed, her eyes couldn't hide the breathtaking beauty of her face. The blood only added a touch of tragic, fragile beauty. Kinsey stood back, watching as her grandfather took Clara's wrist to check her pulse. She couldn't help but stare at Clara. She had to admit, the woman's beauty was despair-inducing. It made you feel inadequate. But right now, her life force was faint. She probably didn't have much time left. As Kinsey was thinking this, Dr. Luo, who had been checking Clara's pulse, slowly opened his eyes, his brow furrowed. After a long moment, his expression softened. He looked at Clara's trembling eyelashes and shook his head with a weary sigh. "Miss Sterling, are you going to keep pretending to be asleep in front of an old man like me?" Kinsey gasped. "Grandpa? What are you talking about?" But before her astonished eyes, the woman on the bed slowly opened her eyes. A lazy, playful light danced in their jewel-like depths. As expected, nothing gets past you, Dr. Luo. Clara's pale lips curved into a smile, so stunningly beautiful it was breathtaking. Right in front of Kinsey, she calmly detached the monitors from her fingers and sat up. Her movements were graceful, regal, showing no signs of a near-fatal injury. She looked less like a victim and more like a master huntress, patiently waiting for her prey to walk into a perfectly laid trap. The blood and grime on her face now looked less like signs of trauma and more like the triumphant markings of a predator. Kinsey was speechless for a few seconds. Miss Sterling, you're not hurt. Why would she pretend? Why drag her and her grandfather out here in the middle of the night for this elaborate show?" Dr. Luo chuckled, having already figured out. "I assume you're doing this to smoke out the disloyal elements within your own family?" He understood that much. What he didn't understand was why Clara would go to such lengths, getting herself injured in the process for a few small-time traders. He knew how seriously she took her personal space and cleanliness. And now, her perfect face had a scratch on it. "Yes and no," Clara said, arching a perfect eyebrow. She took a mirror from a bodyguard and examined the cut on her face. It was a tiny millimeter-long scratch near the corner of her eye, but it clearly annoyed her. "This won't scar, will it?" she asked. She knew that every woman Jason had ever chased was a top-tier beauty. If she had a scar, and he saw it, Dr. Luo's mouth twitched. "It won't. If you don't disinfect it soon, it'll probably heal on its own. Of all the things to worry about right now." Reassured, Clara put down the mirror and took a tablet from the bodyguard. It was streaming the live feed from the hallway, showing her father's grand performance. A cold sneer touched her lips. "My dear father, so impatient. I'm not even dead yet, and you're already trying to seize power?" She tossed the tablet aside and glanced at her bodyguard. "Keep an eye on him. Find every last one of his supporters in the company. I want them all gone. Not a single one remains." Her voice was ice. She didn't even bother to look up, as if a fool like Victor Sterling could ever threaten the empire she had built. This little drama wasn't just for that old man. It was for Jason. "He'll come," she thought, a cold certainty in her eyes. "I know he will." Clara's gaze was as sharp and unyielding as ever. Dr. Luo, watching her, felt a chill run down his spine. "Mad. They're all mad," he muttered, his face a mask of shock. He had thought Clara's usual behavior was extreme enough. He never imagined she could be even more insane. Clara, oblivious, picked up the tablet again. This time, it showed a hidden camera's angle of the crash. A black car had been tailgating her motorcade, accelerating as it neared the university. Moments after she stopped, it had rammed her without hesitation, sending her car into the lake. When the image was magnified, a familiar flash of white was visible in the driver's seat. Bianca, Clara's brow furrowed, her expression turning grim. But based on a partial glimpse, she couldn't be certain. Or perhaps, she recalled her father's recent warning to be careful of Bianca. Was it possible Victor had staged the attack and was now trying to frame her? But did he even have the capability to pull that off? Looking at the figure in the video, she didn't want to believe it. A wave of helplessness and guilt washed over her. She had been trapped in her own struggles for years before she even learned of her young niece's existence, leaving Bianca to languish in poverty for a decade. By the time Clara had found her, Bianca had already fought her way to a foothold in the family. She had seen the ambition in the girl's eyes, a fierce, startling fire in a small, undernourished frame. She knew Bianca was destined for more, which is why she told her she had to climb to stand beside her as an equal. But over the years, she sensed a rift had grown between them. Forget it. Let her be. Clara sighed, her face dark. She wouldn't investigate this any further. As for Bianca, she would consider this a small repayment for her past neglect. She handed the tablet back to her bodyguard and turned to Dr. Luo. Dr. Luo, I'm going to need your help with one last performance. Her gaze drifted toward the door to the hallway. Dr. Luo, following her line of sight, could only nod wearily. Since you've asked, Miss Sterling, I will of course help. The city of New York was in for a major upheaval. Outside the ICU, Victor Sterling had pushed his way through the reporters to confront Ava and the others. Well, Ava, it looks like little Clara will be out of commission for quite some time. I'll take over management of Sterling Industries for now. And don't you worry, I will find out who did this to my daughter. His face was a smug mask of triumph he couldn't quite conceal. Ava's eyes burned with hatred. She wanted to tear the old man apart. Victor Sterling, my boss has just been admitted, and the media is still here. Are you that desperate to seize control of the family? She said, her voice dripping with ice. If the reporters weren't present, she would have already lost control. As Clara's father, he was nowhere to be found when the papers needed signing. But the moment there was a power vacuum, he was the first to appear. Victor was unfazed. What are you talking about, Ava? Are you trying to take power for yourself? Who else should run my family's company but me? He shot back, shamelessly turning the accusation around. Ava laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Mr. Sterling, you must be dreaming. The boss knew that if anything happened to her, vultures would circle. That's why she prepared a contract months ago. In the event of her incapacitation, all Sterling family assets and control of the company will be equally inherited by Miss Bianca Sterling. And Mr. Jason Miller, you, Mr. Sterling, have no inheritance rights. So how exactly do you plan to run the company? Ava said with a smirk, producing a legal document from her briefcase. A dead silence fell over the hallway. Brooke, Hannah, and Victor all stared at Ava, their faces etched with disbelief. Brooke felt her world tilt. She must have misheard. Clara had left her entire fortune to be split between Bianca and Jason. Did they have any idea what that meant? The Sterling Empire was a colossal force in New York. Even half of it would instantly make Jason Miller one of the wealthiest men in the city. She could understand leaving half to Bianca. But to Jason, a wave of dizziness washed over Brooke. The cars, the property she had given him, they were nothing, childish trinkets. A deep, cold dread filled her. Clara, she was that in love with him? Enough to secure his future even after her death, and she had done nothing but push him away. A few feet away, Jason, disguised in his scrubs, heard every word. He felt a shock, so profound it was like being struck by lightning. He tried to speak, but his throat was tight. A strange, hollow feeling spread through his chest, and a wire he didn't know was there suddenly snapped in his mind. How could this be? The devil woman had called him a tool, a means to an heir. Why? Why would she leave him everything? He didn't believe it. His hands, gripping the medical cart, began to tremble. Meanwhile, Victor Sterling, hearing his inheritance had been given away, finally exploded. What did you say? That bitch. She left everything to outsiders. The Sterling fortune is mine. Victor shrieked, his face turning purple with rage. The reporters stared, jaws agape. What kind of father cursed his own daughter like that? And what did he mean it was all his? Years ago, after the old patriarch died, the Sterling family had been on the verge of collapse. It was Clara who had single-handedly rebuilt it into the powerhouse it was today. Without her, Victor Sterling was nothing. Feeling the weight of their stares, Victor realized he'd gone too far. He tried to force a smile. What I meant was, the company is a heavy burden. Bianca and Jason, they're too young. How could they handle it? I think my daughter didn't consider that. The inheritance should go to her own father, shouldn't it? No one responded. Ava turned her back on him with a contemptuous snort. Brooke finally had enough. Have some damn decency, Victor. Screaming about money outside your daughter's hospital room? You're embarrassing. She looked him up and down, as if he were something she'd scraped off her shoe. Victor's face flushed a deep, mottled red. You, Brooke Lynn, you've gone too far. It was all he could manage, a pathetic, toothless retort. Brooke just laughed. Save it. If I find out you were the one who hit Clara and try to frame me, you'll be the one screaming for help. The threat, combined with the lingering fear that Clara might not actually be dead, sent a wave of panic through Victor. He had been too hasty. Just then, Dr. Luo emerged from the ICU, his face grave. Dr. Luo, how is my boss? Ava and the others rushed forward. Jason watched intently from the back of the crowd. Dr. Luo cleared his throat. Miss Sterling's condition is Critical. She remains in a coma. This is the official notice. He held out a document. Ava's vision went black. Dr. Luo, are you saying she's not going to make it? She couldn't accept it. Just this morning, they had been talking. Jason felt an unexpected pang of sorrow. Maybe it was because of what he'd just heard about the inheritance, but he felt a flicker of warmth and regret for the woman. Dr. Luo nodded solemnly, trying to suppress a smile. These assistants of Clara's were brilliant in business, but emotionally, they were clueless. Yes, that's correct. At his confirmation, Ava's eyes rolled back, and she fainted on the spot. Hey, what's this? Someone get her to a room. Dr. Luo exclaimed, startled. Victor, however, was barely hiding his glee. Is she really dying, doctor? Really? His bizarre reaction left Dr. Luo speechless. What a family. A father praying for his own daughter's death. Yes, her condition is extremely poor, Dr. Luo said, sticking to the script. On cue, Clara's hospital bed was wheeled out of the ICU. Lying still, her beautiful face ashen, she looked utterly lifeless. Seeing her, the last of everyone's doubts vanished. We should go see her, Hannah said softly. She, and a conflicted Brooke, followed the gurney to a private room. Ava, having been revived, stumbled after them. Victor, meanwhile, turned on his heel, his face alight with manic excitement. That little bitch was finally dead, but he had to deal with that inheritance nonsense. Tomorrow's bidding conference was his chance. He pulled out his phone. Get the word out to the board. Clara is on her deathbed. I'm in charge now. And you, transfer all available liquid assets to my personal account now. With Clara gone, no one could stop him. If he offered G Corp enough incentives, they'd have to help him secure his position. Inside the private room, Clara lay still, a clear oxygen mask covering her face. It made her look impossibly fragile, heartbreakingly so. Even Brooke, standing by the bed, was uncharacteristically quiet. I told you not to fight me over a man, she muttered, frowning. Don't you know your own limits? Her expression was complicated. After all these years of rivalry, was this really how it ended? She didn't notice Clara's fingers twitch. Listening to Brooke's smug tone, Clara had to actively suppress the urge to kill her. Fight her, as if he had been hers from the beginning. That would never change. Clara forced herself to remain still. Hannah, standing behind Brooke, overheard. Fight over a man. Her gentle eyes lit up with interest. She couldn't imagine what kind of man could make these two titans of New York society go to war. But if Brooke had a new man, did that mean she was finally over Jason? Well, Brooke, it's quite a coincidence that you and Miss Sterling fell for the same person, Hannah teased, her mood lifting. Brooke's face turned scarlet. What's it to you? When had this old-fashioned professor become such a gossip? Hannah just smiled, a knowing look on her face. You forget, I'm an expert in psychology. You can't hide it from me. You must really like this young man. Your eyes give you away. You should introduce me sometime. As long as it wasn't Jason, she didn't care who Brooke liked. Brooke shuddered. She had a weird feeling Hannah was fantasizing about something, but she couldn't prove it. No wonder they say older women love to gossip. You're certainly proving them right, Professor, Brooke snapped. Hannah's smile vanished. Ew, she seethed, her face turning pale. She hated being called old, especially since it was technically true. On the bed, Clara clenched her teeth. Did these two have to come to her deathbed just to argue? Did they think she couldn't hear them? Still, listening to them bicker, a cold smile played in her mind. She thought Brooke might have matured, but no, she was still the same spoiled brat. And this Hannah Chun? All bust, no brain. Jason would never fall for a woman 10 years his senior, who seemed to have the IQ of a houseplant. Clara's eyes cracked open, just a sliver to glance down at her own chest. I'm not that far off. Satisfied, she closed them again. Hannah frowned. Had you just seen Clara move? The patient needs to rest. No arguing in here. We need to change her fore drip, a young nurse announced sternly, entering the room and shooing them out. Behind her, Jason followed, pushing a medical cart. Let's go, Brooke said, already heading for the door. She was more concerned about finding Jason back at Hannah's house than watching Clara die. Hannah followed, but her gaze lingered on the tall, masked male nurse. His build, it looked so familiar, so much like Jason. She was about to ask, but he had already turned his back to her and was walking toward Clara's bed. Shaking her head, Hannah left. Once they were gone, only Jason and the nurse remained in the room. Jason approached the bed. Seeing Clara's pale, beautiful face, he felt a deep frown crease his brow. He hadn't believed she was really this injured, but the weekly beeping monitor told a different story. He stood there in silence, just watching her. Lying there, she looked vulnerable. It sparked an unfamiliar feeling of protectiveness in him. He reached out and gently brushed a stray lock of damp hair from her forehead. As he did, the woman on the bed's perfect brow twitched. Wait, Brooke and Hannah are gone. Everyone in here should be one of my people. Who dares touch my hair? Clara's irritation grew, but she kept her eyes closed, waiting. Whoever this was, they were getting sloppy. First her hair, what next? Her face? As if on cue, Jason's hand slipped, his fingers poking her cheek. The air froze. Every cell in Clara's body screamed. She hated being touched. Whoever this person was, she was going to have their hands cut off. Her fingers tightened into a fist. She was done pretending. She was going to wake up and kill this presumptuous pig. But just then, the young nurse gasped and smacked Jason's hand away. What the hell, are you crazy? Do you know who that is? That's Clara Sterling. You have a death wish. The nurse was terrified. This guy was insane. People who dared to poke a sleeping tiger wouldn't dare touch Clara Sterling's face. Can I touch her? Is it that serious? Jason asked, genuinely confused. He remembered her practically demanding he hold her, his hands pressed against her skin. She didn't seem to have a problem with it then. The sound of his voice stopped Clara cold. A jolt of pure, unadulterated excitement shot through her, so powerful it made her heart thunder in her chest. He came. Jason actually came. He couldn't stand to see her hurt after all. She knew it. Her gamble had paid off. Her heart rate spiked, and the monitor began to beep erratically. Jason panicked. What's happening? Why is her heart rate going crazy? Doctor, we need a doctor. Don't yell, the nurse hissed, a guilty look flashing across her face. She rushed to clamp a hand over his mouth. The monitor's broken. I'll fix it. She fumbled with the wires behind the machine, shooting a meaningful look at Clara. She knew her boss hated being touched, but a little poke on the cheek shouldn't cause a reaction like this. What had gotten into her? Jason listened to the flimsy excuse, feeling his intelligence being insulted. You're telling me a hospital this big has a faulty EKG machine? Jason muttered, starting to wonder if he'd walked into some back alley clinic. For a second, he doubted if Clara Sterling was even in critical condition. But then he looked at the woman on the bed, utterly still. This was a woman who was an immovable force in front of anyone, always radiating an unshakable, almost arrogant strength. Now, even as he gently poked her cheek, she didn't stir. If she wasn't truly unconscious, she was putting on the performance of a lifetime. But faking a coma? With the Sterling family in turmoil, that didn't seem to benefit her. Yeah, she doesn't have the stamina for that, Jason thought, nodding to himself. When she was quiet like this, she almost looked fragile. If he hadn't once had this she-devil press the barrel of a gun to his head, he might have actually believed it. But looking at her now, so motionless, he figured she didn't even have the strength to stand up and threaten him anymore. His thought, however, landed with perfect clarity in Clara's mind. What does he mean, I don't have the stamina? She fumed internally. Was my stamina poor? On our wedding night, we were perfectly matched, a symphony of mutual understanding. And he dares say, I lack stamina. Clara's hand, hidden beneath the sheets, clenched into a fist. Fine, I have no stamina. Is that it? Next time, I'll make sure he's the one begging for mercy. For now, though, her initial impulse to keep Jason here faded. His location was already within her grasp. She could wait until after the upcoming bidding conference, after she'd dealt with Victor Sterling, to handle him. Besides, she wanted to give him a chance. The clause in her will was a deliberate performance for his benefit. She knew Ava would announce it, and she knew Jason would hear about it the moment he arrived. She was betting that this single act would soften him, make him come back to her willingly. Of course, if he wasn't willing. She had no problem with dragging him back herself. As these thoughts raced through Clara's mind, Jason, standing by the bed, felt a sudden chill. Did her expression just shift? He felt an ominous shadow pass over him, the kind of gut feeling that had always served him well. Yet, the woman on the bed hadn't moved a muscle. Jason stared at her, suspicion gnawing at him. He watched her for so long that Clara almost broke character. Finally, he seemed to relent. It was probably nothing. Still, he needed to check the surveillance data Sprite had sent him to be sure. With that, Jason stepped back. He watched a nurse change Clara's foredrip, then followed her out of the room. The moment the door clicked shut, the woman on the bed opened her eyes. Ma'am, a bodyguard immediately stepped forward, handing her a glass of water. That was Mr. Miller, wasn't it? Are you sure we shouldn't bring him back? He was completely baffled. Just a short while ago, she had been hunting for Jason like a woman possessed. Now, with him right in front of her, she just let him go. It was like letting a cooked duck fly away. Bring him back? You underestimate him, Clara said, a cold smile playing on her lips, her eyes glinting like ice. She didn't want him back. The boy had fake devotion to trick her, and part of her wanted to sever every tendon in his body and lock him in a cage. But if she made a move now, she wasn't certain she could hold him. He had dared to come here, which meant he came prepared. Even if she caught him, he would resent her for it and just run again. No, the only way was to dismantle his entire support system, to make him understand that she was the only person who mattered in his world. Only then would he stay by her side willingly. That was why she had publicized the will, leaving half of everything to him. She refused to believe he wouldn't be tempted. Besides, he had come to see her. He was worried about her. She knew it. That boy's tough talk was just a front. Deep down, he still cares about me, Clara murmured, her eyes fixed on the door Jason had left through, an irrepressible smile spreading across her face. The bodyguard's mouth twitched. Seriously? How on earth did you get that from what just happened? Stop inventing fanfiction in your head. All he did was poker cheek. For all we know, he was just checking to see if you were actually dead, so you'd stop chasing him. Was his boss the world's most delusional romantic? How could she spin this into a love story? In truth, Jason's thoughts weren't far from what the bodyguard suspected. He really had just come to see if she was genuinely hurt. But there was, admittedly, a flicker of something more complex in his feelings. Clara, however, saw none of that. Release the information. Tell everyone that I drew up my will before the accident. As long as Jason Miller comes back, my people will give him their full support to become the new CEO of the Sterling Corporation. The gloom that had hung over her vanished, replaced by a spark of excitement in her eyes. Then, her thoughts turned to Bianca. As for Bianca, the inheritance split remains the same. Just let her focus on her studies. A flicker of weariness crossed Clara's face. That was her original plan anyway. If something truly happened to her, Bianca would get half. She was her only living relative. As her aunt, Clara knew she had neglected Bianca's upbringing for years, especially her psychological well-being, which had led to the girl's heavy-hearted nature. She could understand that. The bodyguard could only nod. Yes, ma'am. Elsewhere in New York City, in a dark, windowless room, Bianca Sterling's small frame was curled into a corner. Her white dress was torn and stained with blood from the car crash. Her long, brown curls were a tangled mess, and a trickle of dried blood matted her forehead. Her pale face was utterly devoid of color, and her pretty pink-hued eyes were vacant, like a doll's. She looked like a broken toy, small and shattered, huddled motionlessly on the floor. Only the constant trembling of her hands betrayed her inner turmoil. Brother, Bianca knows she was wrong. Please don't leave me, okay? She whispered to herself, her voice a broken, desperate plea. Her gaze was distant, lost in some deep terror. She hadn't meant for it to happen, but she couldn't control it. She hated the way those people looked at her brother. She hated the fear in his eyes when he looked at her even more. She never wanted to be like this, but when her condition flared, she lost all control. In the darkness, she saw the faces of the children who used to throw stones at her, their features twisting into demonic masks. Their taunts and jeers became a nightmarish chorus. All she could do was cry and call for her brother. But in her haze, she saw the terror in his eyes as he looked at her before turning his back and disappearing from her world. She wanted to explain, to beg him to stay, but she was lost, floundering, a stray dog, abandoned and pathetic. Suddenly, a small slot in the room's door slid open, and two men's voices drifted in. Still like this? Give her the sedative. Clara's people haven't found anything yet. She was way too reckless this time. Two men in black, their faces obscured by masks, entered the room. Tattoos of the numbers 33 and 34 were visible on their wrists. They were the same men who had taken Bianca from the crash scene. One of them produced a syringe and expertly injected a sedative into Bianca's arm. She didn't react at all, as if she were used to it. All right, the drug should take effect within 2 hours. Vitals are stable. Let's just drop her somewhere and get out of here. After checking that she was physically fine, just emotionally unstable, they carried her out of the room. They drove into the city and simply left her on a random street. Their mission was only to ensure their asset wasn't exposed and didn't die. Nothing more. Meanwhile, Jason left Clara's hospital room, shedding the nurse's scrubs he'd used as a disguise as he walked. No one stopped him. It was almost suspiciously easy. None of Clara's bodyguards even gave him a second glance. But the whole time his hand, hidden in his pocket, was clenched around the hilt of a dagger. Clara had been right. Before coming, he had prepared for the worst. Fortunately, it seemed the woman really was down for the count. A complicated mix of emotions churned within him. After getting into Wesley Chen's BMW, Sprite's voice came through the chip behind his ear. Jason, I found the traffic cam footage from a crash site. Good. Send it to me. I think. You need to see this for yourself, Sprite said, her voice hesitant. What do you mean? Jason frowned. Just then, a video file appeared on his phone. These are from some private cameras I set up around campus when I first enrolled. No one else has this data, Sprite explained. Jason hit play. The next second, his pupils constricted. On the screen, at a dimly lit intersection near the university, a black car sped into frame, ramming directly into Clara's vehicle with a deafening crash. The camera angle shook, and then a figure in white emerged from the black car. The figure's face was only half visible, but that one glimpse of a delicate, innocent-looking face was enough for Jason to recognize her instantly. Bianca, he breathed, his voice filled with disbelief. He zoomed in, scrutinizing the image for several seconds, but there was no mistake. The person in the video was Bianca Sterling. A dark cloud seemed to settle over him, a cold dread creeping up his spine. How could it be? How could it be Bianca? She was just a scholarship kid from out of state. She had no history, no grudge against Clara. Why would she do this? And where did she even get that car? Jason felt like he was trapped in a dense fog. But one thing was clear. The Bianca in the video had blood-red eyes and was clearly not in her right mind. It was the look of someone either high on stimulants or in the throes of a psychotic break. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his palms sweating. Bianca's condition hadn't gotten better at all. She had lied to him. Jason, what do you want to do now? Sprite asked, sensing his distress. Jason was speechless for a moment. Send me her location. I'm going to ask her myself. That's what I was about to tell you, Sprite said awkwardly. She's in Linwood Alley, and she doesn't look like she's doing too well. What do you mean, not doing well? Jason's brow furrowed as Sprite sent another video. This one showed Bianca's small figure curled up at the entrance of a busy alley, looking small, helpless, and alone amidst the bustling crowd. Jason's patience snapped. Why didn't you say so sooner? He slammed his foot on the accelerator, racing toward Bianca's location. Sprite flinched at his tone. I thought you were scared of her, she finished silently. Didn't you say she was unhinged? Why are you reacting so strongly? And yelling at me? She pouted, a hint of jealousy stinging her. Linwood Alley was a thriving commercial street in the city, teeming with people. Passers-by cast strange looks at Bianca, huddled in a corner in her torn, stained clothes. Noticing the blood on her head, most gave her a wide berth. The late autumn wind was cold, cutting like a dull knife. Bianca just sat there, numb. She felt a pang of regret. She regretted what she'd impulsively done to Clara, but her heart ached as if pierced by needles. Clara and Jason, her aunt and her brother, they were supposed to be the most important people in her life, but now, her eyes were red-rimmed, her mind a chaotic mess, tormented by the hazy memories of her episode. Then, a tall shadow fell over her. Bianca instinctively looked up and saw the face she had longed for day and night. Brother, she whispered, her lips chapped. Tears streamed down her grimy face. Jason's expression was weary. He was angry, truly angry. But seeing Bianca like this, his rage deflated like a punctured balloon. It's cold on the ground. Aren't you going to get up? He said, his voice stern, his face a hard mask. Like a child caught doing something wrong, Bianca scrambled to her feet, but sharp pain from her injured leg caused her to stumble and fall back down. She could only look up at him helplessly. Brother, I can't get up. This time, she wasn't faking it. Jason glanced at her leg, sighed, and scooped her up into his arms. He was struck by how light she was. At 5'4", she was painfully thin, almost as frail as she had been years ago. The baby fat on her cheeks was deceptive. His expression darkened again. This is how thin you are? Did you forget everything I told you about eating properly? At his words, Bianca's eyes welled up again. Brother, he knew. He still loved her. He cared about her. Brother, you haven't held me in so long, she murmured, burying her face in his chest, greedily inhaling his scent as silent tears fell. 2 years, 5 months, and 21 days. She had almost forgotten what he smelled like. Finally, her brother was holding her again. Bianca wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling an overwhelming sense of security. At that moment, her heart was full. She wished time could freeze forever. Jason just sighed in exasperation. Are you trying to murder me? You're holding on so tight, I can barely breathe. He really had no idea what to do with this girl anymore. Bianca reluctantly loosened her grip, but only slightly, as if terrified he would drop her. Jason had no choice but to carry her to a nearby hotel. Welcome. The hotel receptionist had seen it all, but the sight of the two of them still made her pause. What was this? Were young couples getting this creative these days? Couldn't even wait to get a room? When Bianca saw Jason carrying her into a hotel, she misunderstood completely. Brother, why did you bring me here? Her dirty face flushed a little as her mind wandered. A man and a woman? A hotel. The receptionist misunderstood too. Sir, we can't rent rooms to minors. Seeing Bianca's round, youthful face and dazed expression, she placed her hand on the silent alarm button under the counter. She shot Jason a look of utter disgust. Pervert. Going after kids. I'm calling the cops. Minors. Jason was confused. Who was a minor? They were both legal adults. Hearing they might not get a room, Bianca's head shot up, and she glared daggers at the receptionist, a look that screamed, I suggest you mind your own damn business. Do you have your ID? Jason asked Bianca, sighing at her deceptively young face. I have it. Bianca quickly pulled her ID from her pocket, afraid he'd change his mind if she took a second too long. The receptionist took the ID, still skeptical. This girl was just too cute. If it weren't for that venomous glare, she would have suspected the ID was a fake. Room's all set, sir. Enjoy your stay, she said quickly. Jason carried Bianca upstairs and into the room. After being half-strangled the whole way, he immediately set her down on the bed. But the girl wouldn't let go. Brother, where are you going? She looked terrified of being abandoned. Jason had to pry her arms off him. I'm just stepping out for 5 minutes. You go take a shower first. He glanced at the grime on her clothes. You're a little dirty. Why don't you get cleaned up, okay? He was pulling out all the stops, using the same tone one would use to coax a child. In his eyes, Bianca was still just his clueless little sister. Get cleaned up. Bianca blinked her big, pretty eyes, a flicker of understanding dawning. In the romantic drama she watched, couples always had to get cleaned up before they could get all cuddly and intimate. Was her brother asking her to get cleaned up so they could cuddle? Bianca, who had been reluctant just a moment before, suddenly sat up, excited. You're right, brother. I'll go get cleaned up now. She eagerly rushed toward the bathroom. The injury on her leg made her limp in an oddly adorable way, but she didn't utter a single cry of pain. Jason was stunned. A miracle. She could walk on her own now? Then what was the point of him carrying her all this way, nearly getting strangled in the process? Was he just that unlucky? He frowned, almost forgetting his original intention. He had told her to shower, so he could go out, buy medical supplies and clean clothes, and then treat her wounds when he got back. He had no idea what she'd misunderstood. Bianca, you go ahead and shower. I'll be right back, he said, deciding not to overthink it. He grabbed his car keys and left. As he walked through the lobby, the receptionist saw him coming down so quickly and her eyes went wide. No way. Are kids these days out of shape? It hasn't even been 3 minutes. She couldn't help but glance at Jason's physique. TSK, I guess you really can't judge a book by its cover. The guy looks pretty fit. You'd never know. Jason felt a wave of unease under her stare, goosebumps rising on his skin. He quickly left the hotel, got in his car, and drove to a nearby clinic he'd spotted on the way over. It was only a few minutes away. He bought bandages and antiseptic, then stopped at a mall next door for a clean set of clothes before heading back. Inside the hotel room, Bianca had finished her shower and was padding around barefoot. Seeing that Jason wasn't back yet, she took off the bathrobe, slipped under the covers, and waited by the door, her face flushed. After a moment's hesitation, she turned off the main light, switching on a dim, warm lamp that cast a romantic glow over the room. Satisfied, she waited. A few minutes later, the door opened. Jason walked in, holding a bag of medical supplies, and was met with the dimly lit room. Bianca was lying motionless on the bed. He frowned. Bianca, are you not feeling well? Did she have a fever? It was cold out, and it had rained. It wouldn't be surprising if she'd caught a cold. On the way back, Jason had been planning to question her about Clara's crash, but seeing her sick, he put it out of his mind and hurried to her bedside. Bianca, blushing furiously, wriggled closer, a sweet smile on her face. Jason was completely oblivious to what she was thinking. They were on 2 completely different wavelengths. Seeing how red her face was, he became even more certain. What are you smiling about? You've burned yourself silly, he muttered, placing a hand on her forehead. He then tucked the blanket around her, wrapping her up tightly like a spring roll. Bianca's expression froze. Brother? What are you doing? She asked, confused. This wasn't how it happened in the shows. Jason's face was serious. Don't talk. Stick your leg out. Ooh, so my brother likes things a little different? Bianca's eyebrows shot up in understanding. She stuck her small leg out from under the covers. Then, with a heart pounding in anticipation, she peeked over the blanket at him, her face flushed and expectant. Instead of the next move she was waiting for, she saw Jason pull out a roll of something white. Gauze, iodine, medicated cream. Bianca was thunderstruck. Jason, meanwhile, was completely focused, dabbing her wound with an iodine-soaked cotton swab, applying the cream, and wrapping it all up. He didn't even look at her face. To finish, he tied the bandage into a perfect, neat little bow, looking quite proud of his handiwork. Bianca's face, however, had turned from crimson to ashen and back again. She was seeing red. A girl's blush isn't always from shyness. Sometimes it's from pure rage. Bianca stared at Jason's focused expression, feeling for the first time in her life a sense of utter speechlessness toward her brother. She had showered. She had practically taken her pants off, and he was telling her he was here to bandage her wound? Seriously? Her face darkened to the color of a burnt pot, her mouth twitching uncontrollably. Jason noticed and raised an eyebrow. What? You don't like it? I don't like it. Bianca snapped. All right. Jason hesitated, then undid the bow and retied it into the shape of a little rabbit. How about this? Better now, right? He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, looking proud of his much-improved creation. Now, that was professional. Bianca was petrified, frozen in place. A moment later, a furious roar erupted from her. I hate you, brother. Her eyes reddened with anger, and she looked like she wanted to tackle him right there. But her small frame lacked the strength, and her injured leg made it impossible. In that moment, Bianca wished she could apprentice under Ava. She needed to learn how to fight. She needed to be the one in control. Jason was completely bewildered. So no to the butterfly, and no to the rabbit? What do you want then? Women were so hard to please. Isn't it obvious what I want, brother? Bianca's eyes were glistening as she scooted closer to him. Jason felt a familiar sense of foreboding. He edged away on the bed. Ahem, let's get one thing straight. Body parts are not for sale. This girl was acting weird. Very weird. But he couldn't quite put his finger on it. You. Bianca's cheeks puffed out, exasperated by his denseness. She buried her face in her arms and started to sob. Jason hadn't expected her to actually cry. He wanted to peek to see if she was faking it, but that seemed rude. Ahem, stop crying. I won't tie it for you. You can do it yourself. Here's the medicine for the cut on your head. He coughed, pushing the bandage and cream toward her. Watching her small, trembling shoulders, he found it hard to reconcile this girl with a red-eyed, manic figure from the crash footage. But the facts are the facts. Bianca was the one who hit Clara. The injuries on her body were proof enough. So, talk, Jason said, his tone turning serious as he poured her a glass of water. What did Clara do to you that made you want to crash into her, even if it meant getting hurt yourself? Bianca lifted her head slightly, took the cup, and her eyes darkened at his words. He knows? Does that mean? He hates me now. Her heart leaped in her throat. It was an accident. Would you believe me, brother? She asked, batting her big, cat-like eyes pitifully. Jason stared at her, his expression flat. What do you think? The video clearly showed her car aiming straight for Clara's. An accident? Was he an idiot? Brother, it's true. My condition flared up. I wasn't thinking straight when it happened. I really didn't mean to. Bianca said quickly, seeing her lie had failed. Jason kept his eyes fixed on her. A flare-up? Didn't you tell me you were better? You lied to me. Bianca realized she'd slipped up, but a rebellious thought surfaced. He lied to me first. He married my aunt. How can he accuse me of lying? Just a little. I'm still a little bit unwell, she mumbled, her voice growing fainter. It was true that she was a little better. She hadn't lied about that. Jason's face was grim. Then why did you hit Clara? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're in? Clara's people are tearing the city apart looking for you. If you get caught, you won't even know what hit you. His tone was harsh. This wasn't a game. He'd seen what Clara was capable of. She treated killing people like swatting flies. And even with Clara in a coma, her subordinates were no pushovers. Hearing his scolding, a flicker of hurt crossed Bianca's face. Brother, are you worried about me? He was worried about her getting caught, not about Clara's injuries. It was true. He did care about her most. He rushed all the way here just for her. Bianca's eyes reddened again, but she realized he didn't seem to know about her relationship with her aunt. Should she tell him? While she hesitated, Jason pushed a hotel key card toward her. I booked this room for a month. You stay here for now. His expression was grave. The traffic cams probably didn't get a clear shot of your face. Just lay low for a few days and see how things with Clara play out. He knew Bianca's condition. Confined spaces could trigger an episode. If he handed her over to the NYPD, she wouldn't last in a jail cell. And if Clara's people found out Bianca was responsible, the girl would probably end up as fertilizer for the Sterling Estate's rose bushes by the next morning. So, Jason chose to hide her. He'd deal with the fallout after the storm passed. As for Clara, Jason's head throbbed. What a mess. He wasn't the one who caused the crash, but he was stuck with the consequences. But Bianca, back in high school, he had always seen her as his own sister, one of the few family connections he had. He couldn't just abandon her. Hide. Bianca looked at the key card, hesitating. Then, can you come see me every day, brother? She didn't need to hide. But if it meant he would visit her daily, she was willing. Wasn't this what they called setting someone up in a love nest? Yeah, don't go out. Order in if you're hungry. I'll make time to come see you every day. Jason nodded. Then he remembered something else. By the way, where did you get that black car? He remembered Bianca being an orphan. How could she afford a car? Bianca, who had been thrilled to hear he would visit, faltered at the question. It was a taxi. The driver tried to harass me, so I stole his car and ran. Then my condition flared up. She paused for 3 seconds, then pouted, tears welling up on command as she reached out to him. I was so scared, brother. Can you give me a hug? She looked like a wounded little girl desperate for comfort. Jason studied her expression. It didn't look like she was lying. He hesitantly pulled out a bank card. There's $20,000 on this. Use it to pay the driver back for his car. The rest is for food delivery. He held the card, feeling a sharp pang of regret. This was several years' salary for a normal person. He hadn't come by his wealth easily and wasn't the type to squander it. He'd always been frugal, wearing his old high school uniform as regular clothes through college because he couldn't bear to replace it. If Sprite, who was currently disconnected, could see this, her jaw would hit the floor. There were probably only a handful of people in all of New York City who could get Jason Miller to part with 20 grand. Sure enough, looking at the bank card, Bianca's eyes filled with tears again. She didn't need the money. She could make millions a month if she wanted to. But this was from her brother. Bianca joyfully took the card, a warmth spreading through her chest. Was this payment for keeping her? If so, what should she do for him in return? While her mind was racing with these thoughts, Jason's phone rang. He frowned, glanced at the caller ID, and saw it was Dr. Hannah Chun. He had only given his personal number to Kenzie, Dr. Chun, and Bianca. Even after changing phones, he'd kept the same number. Seeing the name, Jason glanced at Bianca, who was happily clutching the bank card, and stepped into the bathroom to answer. Hello, Jason. Are you coming back to stay tonight? Dr. Chen's gentle voice came through the phone. Jason hesitated. He wasn't sure if Clara's people were still looking for him, but it was probably safer to stay at Dr. Chen's place for a while. Yes, I am, he said. Could you ask the staff to leave a door unlocked for me? I'll be back soon. By the way, is Brooklyn still there? Hearing he was coming back, Dr. Chen's eyes lit up. When he asked about Brooke, she raised an eyebrow and glanced toward the living room. She had pretended to get a glass of water to make the call from the kitchen. Right now, Brooke was sitting in the living room, eating a late-night snack. She didn't look to be in a good mood, surrounded by a mountain of desserts, mostly blueberry pie. Seeing that Brooke had no intention of leaving, Dr. Chen's eyes narrowed in annoyance. She's still here, but she's already asleep, she lied smoothly. Don't worry, you can come back. As she spoke, Dr. Chen poured a glass of water. Then she took out a small packet of powder and emptied it into the glass. She carried it out to Brooke. Professor Chun, I didn't realize you were so nice. Thanks. Brooke was getting tired of the sweets and, without a shred of suspicion, took the glass and drank. A few minutes later, she slumped over the table, fast asleep. A smile touched Dr. Chen's lips. Sorry about this, Brooke. You just need a nice long nap. She really didn't want another woman around when she was talking with Jason. Brooke would have to be inconvenienced. Take Miss Lynn to the guest room to sleep. She's tired, Dr. Chun said, giving a pointed look to a maid. The maid understood immediately and helped Brooke up. Brooke's bodyguards, who had been waiting outside, came in when they heard the commotion. Seeing that Brooke was merely asleep, they weren't suspicious and helped move her to the guest room, where they stood guard outside the door. Their only job was to ensure her safety. Besides, they were grateful for the peace and quiet. When Brooklyn was awake, they were constantly on edge. Hearing from Dr. Chen that Brooke was asleep, Jason breathed a sigh of relief. Bianca, you get some rest. I'm going back to rest, too. I'll see you tomorrow, Jason said, stepping out of the bathroom. He picked up his jacket, ready to leave. Bianca, who had been basking in contentment, saw he was leaving and her face fell. Brother, are you going to see Clara? Her question stopped Jason in his tracks. Bianca, what are you talking about? He turned, his eyes sharp and suspicious. You know Clara? He felt like Bianca was hiding something from him. Bianca ignored his question, her eyes turning red. Brother, answer me. Are you going to see Clara? He had only been with her for a short while. Why do you have to go back to their aunt? She knew Clara's car was equipped with top-of-the-line safety features. The crash wouldn't have been life-threatening. Was her brother really that worried about her? Bianca, that's none of your concern, Jason said, his face darkening. Clara is seriously injured and in a coma. She could die at any moment. You should stay here and reflect on what you've done." At his words, Bianca's pupil shrank. "What? How is that possible?" she stammered, stunned. Jason had already turned and left the room. "Brother." A chill washed over Bianca as she stared at his retreating back. She wanted to run after him, but her injured leg made it impossible. By the time she limped out of the room, he was gone. In that moment, Bianca felt as if she were encased in ice. Impossible. How could this happen? She remembered that Clara was notoriously cautious, always surrounded by bodyguards, her car and home fortified with security systems. How could she have been so easily, so severely injured? Bianca's lips felt numb. A wave of regret washed over her, a suffocating weight in her chest. She didn't know what this feeling was, but she knew she didn't want her aunt to die. She just wanted her aunt to stop trying to take her brother away from her. "Why did it turn out like this?" she murmured, pulling out her phone. News alerts about Clara's critical condition flooded the screen. Bianca's eyes turned red. Finally, she changed into the new dress her brother had bought her and, dragging her injured body, hailed a cab and headed straight for the hospital where Clara was. No, she didn't believe it. She had to see it with her own eyes. After leaving the hotel, Jason sat in the BMW, his mood just as sour. He didn't mean to be so cold to Bianca, but he had to make her understand. A child who does something wrong must be punished. A timeout was letting her off easy. Shaking off the thoughts, he drove back to the Chun residence. As he parked, he saw Dr. Chun was already waiting for him. "Jason, you're finally back," she said, holding an umbrella, her thin figure standing at the villa's entrance. When she saw him, a loving, almost maternal smile spread across her face. "I made you some ginger soup. Come in and warm up." Her gentleness was a balm, instantly warming a part of Jason he didn't know was cold. "Professor Chun, you're not wearing enough. You'll catch a cold out here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's my fault for being so late." He gave her shoulder a gentle, grateful pat. His parents had died when he was 5, but he still remembered his mother waiting for him, just like this after kindergarten. Dr. Chun gave him that same long-lost feeling of warmth. After days of being pulled between Clara, Brooke, and Bianca, it was a profound relief. But the moment he touched her shoulder, Dr. Chun stiffened as if struck by lightning, her face flushing crimson. Jason, are you worried about me?" Dr. Chun's cheeks were flushed, her eyes like autumn pools, her entire body tense. For years, she had dedicated herself to scientific research, spending nearly every waking hour in a lab. She had little contact with men and almost zero physical contact, especially not with a young man like Jason, who was in his prime, radiating heat and vitality. His warm hand on her shoulder felt like a brand on her heart, sending a wave of warmth through her. Jason saw her expression and suddenly had a very bad feeling. It was the same feeling he got around Clara, Brooke, and Bianca. For a dizzying moment, he felt a sense of déjà vu. "Professor, what are you saying? It's only natural for a student to care about his teacher, isn't it?" Jason snatched his hand back as if he'd been stung. He stared at her face, his mind racing with suspicion. "No, it can't be. This is the gentle Professor Chun. I can't be thinking she's like the other 3. He wasn't sure. Seeing his look, Dr. Chun quickly composed herself. "Oh, I just meant, you've grown up, Jason." She offered an awkward explanation, her gentle expression returning. Jason finally relaxed. "Professor, you're making me feel like a stranger. I've always considered you my closest family." He followed her into the villa's living room. Brooke was, as promised, nowhere to be seen. On the dining table were the remains of some blueberry pie and a clay pot of Dr. Chun's ginger soup. "Jason, come, drink this." Dr. Chun nonchalantly tossed the pie aside and lifted the lid of the pot. She ladled a bowl and waved him over. "Thank you, Professor." Jason sat down, deeply moved. He took the bowl, looked inside, and his brain instantly short-circuited. Professor? What is this?" "Bull pizzle, sheep kidney, goji berries, deer antler, ginseng. And were those oysters?" Jason's eyelid twitched violently. He felt like he was glitching. This was all stuff for boosting virility. There were only a few scattered slices of ginger in the whole pot. This was ginger soup. Dr. Chun saw his stunned expression and smiled with satisfaction. "I made this specially for you. It's a very restorative tonic." "Jason, you can't disappoint your professor's heartfelt efforts. Now, can you?" She sat across from him, her face full of expectation, as if his refusal to drink would be a betrayal of her sincerity. Jason nearly coughed up blood. Some tonic, some heartfelt effort. A guy with ED could drink this, and probably put a dent in a steel door. He'd be taller lying down than standing up, and she wanted him to drink it. Moreover, looking at this chaotic stew, he seriously suspected she was trying to poison him, but he had no proof. He couldn't figure out. Did he seem weak or something? Why were both Clara and now Professor Chun trying to feed him this stuff? Professor, I don't think I'm thirsty. Jason stared at the bowl of sincerity, sweat beading on his forehead. Dr. Chin's expression immediately turned crestfallen. Jason, I spent an hour simmering this soup. You have to at least try it. Try it. Jason's mouth twitched. This was going to be difficult. But looking at her expression, he gritted his teeth, lifted the bowl, and took a careful sip. Instantly, Jason felt like he'd been transported to a barnyard. The gaminess was overwhelming. But he was a tough guy. He forced himself to swallow, fighting the urge to gag, tears welling in his eyes. Only then was Dr. Chin satisfied. See how much you're enjoying it? No one's going to fight you for it. Want another bowl? No. Jason waved his hands frantically. Dr. Chin reluctantly put the ladle down. Jason, I have a bidding conference tomorrow, so I might not be home, she said. Do you have anything planned? She desperately wanted to take him. Jason's status wasn't high enough to get into an event like that, but her father had told her to bring a male companion. She didn't want to bring Wesley. A male companion. A male friend should be fine, right? With her connections, she could probably get Jason in. No need, Professor. I have plans tomorrow, Jason said, immediately shaking his head. As the forgotten heir of the Miller family, he indeed didn't qualify for the conference. However, he would be attending tomorrow as Mr. G, so he couldn't go with her. All right then, Dr. Chin looked disappointed. She reached out and affectionately patted his head. Then you be a good boy and wait at home for me, okay? I'll make you something delicious when I get back. Dr. Chun was already a gentle beauty, but now she bloomed like a white peony. As she leaned in, her feminine scent wrapped around him like a siren's call. Jason, having just downed the soup, felt like he was being roasted over an open fire. Professor, I'm feeling a little hot. I think I'll go to bed now. Bang. Jason shot to his feet, drenched in sweat. Damn it. He felt like a total animal. His professor was so good to him. How could he think? How could he quickly averted his eyes? I'm leaving now. He hadn't expected the soup to kick in so fast. That stuff was potent. But Dr. Chin grabbed his arm. Jason, wait. Brooke is in the guest room. Why don't you sleep in my room instead? Her cheeks were faintly pink. Her house had 2 guest rooms. But if Jason slept in the room next to Brooke's, he would be discovered too easily. Jason thought about it and agreed it made sense. But, Professor, me sleeping in your room? Is that okay? After all, they were a man and a woman. Oh, you silly boy, what are you thinking? I made a pallet for you on the floor. What? Are you afraid your teacher is going to eat you? Dr. Chun chuckled, tapping his head with her finger. Oh, he said. Well, thank you, Professor. Jason blushed, feeling ashamed. His professor was so open and pure, treating him simply as a student, and here he was with his mind in the gutter. It had to be the soup. He was never drinking that again. Okay, you were a little loud just now. Let's go to my room before Brooke wakes up and comes looking for you, Dr. Chin said, leading him toward her room after he agreed. But for a moment, unseen by Jason, a dark, heated glint flashed in her eyes. This was the second time. The second time Jason would be sleeping alone with her in the same room. The last time was in high school. She had been drunk and didn't remember what happened. She only recalled waking up the next day in a new set of clothes, with a small bloodstain on the bed. The sheets had been a mess, as if a great battle had been fought. She had no memory of that night, but her body had been incredibly sore. That boy, he really didn't know how to be gentle. He was still just as reckless now. As she thought about it, Dr. Chin's cheeks grew hot, and she couldn't help but bite her lip. The last time she woke up, the brat was already gone. He left without a word, which had upset her for quite some time. Thinking of it now, she couldn't resist asking. Jason, I remember one time in high school when I was drunk, you were the one who took me back to my dorm. Do you remember that? Dr. Chin was too shy to ask directly, so she broached the topic delicately. Although she was a traditional person, she'd heard that among young people these days, such things were commonplace. By now, Jason was in her room, lying on the floor pallet she had prepared. He thought for a moment and finally recalled the incident. I think something like that did happen. How could he forget? He never knew why she'd gotten so drunk that day. She seemed to be in a terrible mood and had called him. When Jason arrived, she was so intoxicated she couldn't even stand. He had no choice but to carry her on his back, taking a shortcut back to her dorm. On the way, they were chased by a dog. I got your bedsheets dirty back then. I'm really sorry about that, Jason said, scratching his head in embarrassment. The dog had bitten his leg, and blood had gotten on her pants. He had to get a bunch of shots. It almost made him want to eat dog meat hot pot. He remembered she was well off. Those pants were worth several months of his part-time job earnings. He'd been in a hurry to get his wound treated and was afraid she'd be angry if she woke up and saw the blood. So he had asked a female teacher in the same dorm to help her change. He just didn't know if she remembered any of it. Hearing his apology, Dr. Chun, lying on her bed, blushed even deeper, her heart pounding. The words that came out were a soft reprimand. It's nothing. Young men have a lot of energy. I can understand. So Jason, after that, she began, blushing, but after a long pause, there was no reply. She looked down and saw that Jason had already fallen asleep. She felt a little disappointed. She leaned over the side of the bed, looking at his peaceful face and even breathing. A warmth bloomed in her heart, and she felt a sweet sense of contentment. Good night, Jason. I'm going to sleep now. She gently pinched his cheek before climbing back into bed. 30 minutes later, Jason stealthily got up from the floor. After confirming Dr. Chun was sound asleep, he tiptoed into the bathroom and took out his phone. A few seconds later, the red and blue glow of the screen illuminated his face in the dark. Damn it, I know, I saved it to my bookmarks. 10 minutes later, Jason's legs were numb, and he still hadn't found what he was looking for. He'd almost gotten lost in the digital wilderness. He cursed silently. It was all Ava's fault for breaking his phone. That phone had his collection of 10,000 gigabytes. Whatever, this one will have to do. Finally, he gave up. He deeply regretted drinking that soup. The potency. Professor Chen really was a master of her craft. He didn't know that on the bed, Dr. Chen's eyes had slowly opened, perfectly clear. Listening to the strange noises coming from the bathroom, her expression shifted from confusion to a deep blush. That's strange. The ingredients are restorative, but they shouldn't be that potent. Or is it just because Jason is so virile? She wondered, pulling the blanket over her blushing face. At the same time, in another room of the house, Wesley Chun, a bandage wrapped around his head, was rummaging frantically through his drawers. Where did it go? Crap, I know I left it right here. He fumed, his face red with anger. He'd finally managed to score a date with a cute girl and wanted to use the special medicine his traditional doctor had prescribed. But now the medicine was gone. Hey, have you seen a little white bottle? He asked, grabbing a passing maid. The maid paused. Then, based on his description, she understood. Oh, that? Sir, I thought it was a spice bottle. I put it in the kitchen for you. The maid looked embarrassed. What was that stuff anyway? It looked exactly like a spice bottle. Wesley was too embarrassed to explain. He was sensitive about the issue and had specifically asked the doctor for an unmarked bottle. He never thought a maid would mistake it for seasoning. His face dark, Wesley rushed to the kitchen. A few seconds later, he stared at the empty medicine bottle on the counter and the dregs of ginger soup in the clay pot, and fell into a dead silence. Meanwhile, at the Sterling estate. Well, did you get the money? Victor Sterling paced anxiously in his study, speaking on the phone. Sir, the company currently has only $50 million in liquid assets. Are you sure you want me to transfer it to you? The accountant asked hesitantly. $50 million? Why so little? Victor frowned, displeased. The entire Sterling Corporation was worth at least $1 billion. How could there only be $50 million in cash? Perhaps it's because Miss Sterling has invested heavily in Professor Chen's new projects recently, the accountant suggested. Victor considered it, and it made sense. Fine, transfer it all to me. $50 million was better than nothing. It would be enough for a deposit from Mr. G. Once they were partners, the Sterling fortune would be his for the taking. As his excitement grew, he completely ignored the red flag of such low cash reserves. He then made another call. Oh, thank you so much for your trouble, handling our little matters even while you're abroad. Yes, when Evan gets out, I'll bring him overseas to thank you personally. Victor was all smiles and flattery. He transferred $20 million of the 50 to the person on the other end of the line. It pained him, but he had no choice. Evan was his only son. He'd spend whatever it took to get him out. After hanging up, Victor looked at the remaining $30 million. He found a contact info from Mr. G, which he'd gotten from an inside source, and sent a message. Mr. G, this is Victor Sterling of the Sterling Corporation. I have a business proposal for you. The deposit is $30 million. Please reply upon receipt. After sending the message, he felt a sense of relief. He stared at the copy of Clara's inheritance contract on his desk, his expression turning sinister. It's about time I dealt with you, you little pawn, he sneered. A live-in breeding tool, worthy of inheriting my family fortune? Don't make me laugh. A cruel smile twisted his lips. He turned to one of his men. That Robert Miller has lost his mind, hasn't he? And his son, Leo Miller, Just lying in a hospital bed like a vegetable is a waste of space. Get rid of him. And remember, make it look like Jason Miller did it. That Bianca girl was just as crazy as Clara. He didn't have the nerve to touch her yet. But Jason Miller was a different story. He was confident he could crush him with a snap of his fingers. Victor's twisted face was filled with arrogance. He didn't notice the elegantly dressed woman standing guiltily in the doorway, watching him. I need to speed things up, she thought, taking out her phone and dialing the butler, Wong, at the Chun residence. Damn it, why is this so hard? Jason spent nearly an hour in the bathroom and got nowhere. He was starting to think Professor Chen's concoction could be marketed as a miracle cure for ED. It was invincible. Finally, he gave up, put his phone away, and returned to his spot on the floor, his forehead beaded with sweat. As he passed Chen's bed, he glanced at her. Thankfully, she was sleeping peacefully, showing no signs of waking. If she had hurt him, he would never be able to face her again. Jason breathed a sigh of relief and lay back down. Just then his phone pinged. He frowned. Very few people had this number. The phone had 2 SIM cards, one for his Mr. G persona and one for his personal use. The message had come to the Mr. G number. He opened his phone. The message was from an unknown number. When he saw the signature at the end, he burst out laughing. Victor Sterling. A mocking grin spread across Jason's face. He remembered how Evan Sterling had looked down on him, treating him like dirt. He never thought the day would come when Victor Sterling would be messaging him. Begging for partnership? With this attitude, Jason chuckled, but his laughter died when he saw the $30 million deposit Victor mentioned. Another message came through. Mr. G, to show my sincerity, this first $10 million is a small token of my esteem. The Sterling family has no shortage of money. If you partner with me, we'll split the Sterling fortune together. Victor's message was overflowing with sincerity, a grand display of wealth that was, in reality, making his heart bleed. $10 million. That was enough to support a harem of mistresses. But he knew the principle. You have to spend money to make money. $10 million was a pittance compared to the billions the Sterling Corporation was worth. Jason, however, stared at the string of zeros on the screen and fell silent. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. 10 million. It really was 10 million. He could barely count all the zeros. Although Jason was now a wealthy man, his assets were managed by Sprite, and he rarely paid attention to them. He was more frugal than the average college student, always waiting until the cafeteria was about to close to buy half-price meals. He hadn't realized that even a powerless figurehead like Victor Sterling could be so extravagant. Wait a minute. Where did this old bastard get so much money? Jason's mind clicked. He remembered that Clara had recently stripped Victor of all his business assets and given them to him. Although he hadn't managed them, Victor shouldn't have had any income lately. Looks like he took advantage of Clara's accident to embezzle from the company. Jason realized instantly. A cold smile touched his lips as he accepted the transfer. Gift received. You can keep the sentiment. It was free money after all. And besides, Evan had left a nasty bruise on his shoulder. This $10 million would serve as his medical compensation. Victor, on the other end, was stunned. Huh? Mr. G, perhaps you misunderstood. The $30 million is just a deposit. I'll give you $100 million for the final payment. How about it? He didn't have it now, but he was sure he would after taking over the company. And besides, he was speechless. If you're not going to partner with me, why did you accept the money? Then, an idea struck Jason, and he changed his tune. Fine. Since Mr. Sterling is so sincere, I agree to the partnership. However, the specifics will depend on how things go tomorrow. You understand, right? Jason's tone was polite on the surface, but it was laced with a clear threat. I've agreed, but tomorrow, you follow my lead. Got it? Victor's face darkened, but he swallowed his anger. Fine. Whatever Mr. G says. A fledgling power player dares to threaten me? Just wait until I inherit the Sterling fortune. I'll show him. But Jason's next words plunged him back into an awkward position. Then transfer the other $20 million. Let's see that sincerity. Jason waited. The long silence on the other end told him Victor was probably having a heart attack. He sneered. Your money? It's all my money. Clara had said it herself today. Half the Sterling inheritance was his. Even if the old bastard stole from the company, he wouldn't get to spend a cent of it. As for the partnership, steal his money and then expect to partner with him. After receiving the full amount, Jason took a screenshot of the transaction records and sent it straight to the NYPD. Go ahead, try and steal from me again. Meanwhile, in a private hospital room, Clara Sterling lay in bed, scrolling idly through a tablet, her mind elsewhere. That boy, he was so damn cautious. She had sent people to follow him, but he was as slippery as an eel, giving them no chance. All her men had lost him. Clara's heart felt empty again. Her emotions were being toyed with by that brat, like dangling grapes just out of reach, and it was infuriating. Just then, Ava walked in, her expression grim. "Ma'am, it's just as you predicted. Victor Sterling embezzled company funds to partner with someone from G Corp." She hurried to Clara's bedside, holding a file of evidence. Clara looked up, her reaction calm, as if she'd known all along. "Oh, I only left $50 million in the account. He plans to buy off G Corp with that pittance." She narrowed her eyes, a mocking smile on her face. Ava's expression faltered. "Ma'am, I just received news. G Corp has agreed to partner with Victor Sterling." She couldn't believe it either. The people at G Corp were either insane or they were playing Victor for a fool. But G Corp was so mysterious. Who could possibly figure them out? "Oh, they agreed." A flicker of surprise crossed Clara's face. She recalled the photo of Lucy Miller from a few days ago, and a subtle suspicion began to form. "Interesting. This is getting good. It seemed tomorrow's bidding conference wouldn't be a disappointment." "I hear Evan Sterling is about to be released," Clara added, a smile playing on her lips. Ava nodded quickly. "Yes, I investigated. It was handled by the Sue family's overseas connections. Victor must have paid them off." "He's not a complete fool then," Clara said, unsurprised. No one in New York would dare cross her to help Victor, so he had sought help abroad. What surprised her was that the Sue family would get involved for such a small amount of money. It seemed they had their eyes on her as well. "I remember the Sue family adopted a daughter from here once, didn't they? Take care of it. If they love meddling so much, it's time they were taught a lesson," Clara said calmly. Ava nodded and turned to leave. As she reached the door, she saw a figure in white. "Miss Sterling?" Ava's expression was a mixture of shock and complexity. Bianca Sterling stood in the hospital corridor, bundled up in street clothes. Under her brown, curly hair, her small, makeup-free face was haggard. A gauze pad on her forehead was stained with fresh blood, and the dark circles under her eyes made her pinkish pupils look gray and lifeless. She looked like a marionette with its strings cut, her doll-like face exquisite but dead, almost frightening. "And Miss Sterling, what are you doing here?" Ava felt a sudden shiver. Looking at Bianca's cute face, a chill ran down her spine. She had never seen Bianca like this. Normally, Bianca was all smiles, her charming dimples and cheerful demeanor making her popular with the household staff. But the listless Bianca before her now exuded a coldness, especially the wound on her forehead. In the crash footage, the driver's face was obscured, but it was clear their forehead had hit the steering wheel. Bianca had the exact same injury. It couldn't be a coincidence. "I heard my aunt was in an accident. I came to see her," Bianca said, seemingly too exhausted to maintain her facade. Her face remained a blank, gray mask even as she was being found out. She started to walk toward the room. Ava's eyes widened, and she quickly blocked her path. "Miss Sterling, my boss is in a coma. The doctor said she can't be disturbed. Why don't you just take a look from the doorway?" Cold sweat broke out on her back. There was no way she was letting Bianca in. She cracked the door open just a sliver. Bianca didn't notice her strange behavior. Hearing that Clara was in a coma, her eyes reddened. Through the crack in the door, she saw Clara wearing an oxygen mask, her face deathly pale. Her hands clenched so tightly that her nails drew blood again. How could this happen? I didn't want my aunt to die. How did this happen? At that moment, Bianca's heart felt like it was being crushed by a boulder, making it hard to breathe. "Then let my aunt rest. I'll come back tomorrow," she said, her voice hoarse. Overwhelmed by guilt, she didn't look for long before turning and fleeing, her figure stumbling away. Ava was completely baffled. "Ma'am, she's gone. Are you sure you don't want to do anything about Miss Sterling?" Clara, who had been lying in bed with the oxygen mask, sat up. She stared in the direction Bianca had gone, her eyes dark and profound. "Let her be. One day she'll understand." Her own body was getting weaker. The car crash was a ruse, but the cryotoxin was real. Dealing with Jason and the Sterling Corporation was already more than she could handle. Just like all those years ago, she had neither the time nor the energy to deal with Bianca right now. She was her only family. As long as she could leave her half the inheritance and ensure the girl could live a peaceful life, that was enough. For now, her focus was on Jason. The bait has been set. It's time to reel in the net. That boy would come back to her, willingly and obediently. The next morning, the rain had stopped and the sun was shining brightly. On the soft, large bed, Dr. Chin was gone. Instead, on the floor were two figures tangled together in a messy embrace. MMM. The warm sunlight streamed in, but Jason groaned uncomfortably and rolled over. He'd had a dream. He dreamt he was being chased by Clara, then caught in a chokehold by Ava, who was squeezing the air out of him. He was hot and stuffy, his back slick with sweat. Just as Ava was about to suffocate him, Chun had appeared, pulling him into a warm, soft, and utterly suffocating embrace. Jason felt like he was about to die from oxygen deprivation and finally jolted awake. His vision was filled with darkness, and his face was pressed against something soft and cloudy. His brain stalled for a moment. He realized that at some point Chun had moved from the bed to the floor. She was currently holding his head in her arms, sleeping soundly. The feeling of being strangled and suffocated in his dream had come from Professor Chun. Jason's face instantly turned beet red, and he shoved her away. Damn it, how did he end up in the same blanket as Dr. Chun? He had no memory of it at all. Chun, startled awake, looked just as surprised. Oh, Jason, I'm so sorry. I'm not a very still sleeper. I must have accidentally rolled off the bed. Her explanation was flimsy, her expression awkward, but dressed in a white silk nightgown, with the morning sun creating a gentle halo around her, she looked so pure and proper it was hard to doubt her words. Jason's face was crimson, his mouth twitching. Looking at her, he felt utterly shameful. Ahem, Professor, you should probably get dressed, Jason stammered, his face burning as he pulled the blanket over himself. But this action drew Chun's attention downward. Seeing his embarrassed expression and the way he clutched the blanket over his lap, she pressed her lips together, her eyes glinting with a meaningful smile. Jason is a big boy now. Chun chuckled. Her voice, soft and melodious, seemed to have a magical quality, echoing in his ears and making him blush even harder. Professor, you're joking. He wished the floor would swallow him whole. It was bad enough he was sleeping in his professor's room, but he hadn't done anything inappropriate last night. Had he? He didn't know that, Chun was watching him with an ever-deepening smile. Relax, I didn't see anything, she said, laughing. Jason didn't believe her for a second. Really? No, she admitted honestly, a smile playing on her lips. In fact, she had woken up even earlier than Jason. She had seen everything there was to see. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said he was a big boy. Hearing her words, Jason wanted to die. Damn it, he knew it. He should have just risked sleeping next to Brooklyn's room instead of here. Come on, no need to be so shy. I understand. It's a very normal phenomenon, Chun cooed when she saw he was genuinely distressed. But she couldn't suppress the smile in her eyes. Honestly, she didn't think it was a big deal. With her deep knowledge of academia, she knew these things couldn't be controlled. Besides, he had only started blushing when he saw her. A sense of pleasure bloomed in her chest. Although she was approaching 30, Jason's reaction. Didn't that mean? Chun was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Jason's gaze turning increasingly suspicious. This was not right. Why did he feel a chill down his spine? He instinctively shrank back, his eyes wary. Seeing his movement, Chun's gentle eyes narrowed with a dangerous glint. Jason, you seem to be very afraid of me. Her red lips parted as she placed a hand beside him, leaning over him. Her captivating eyes were fixed on his face, a smile on her lips that sent shivers down his spine. No, Professor, you're mistaken. This is respect. I'm respecting you, he denied vehemently, backing away. But Chun's gaze had already settled on his lips. Oh, just respect? Then why are you hiding? She pressed forward, her face still wearing that gentle mask, but Jason's internal alarm bells were screaming. This was wrong. This was 99% wrong. It was like Professor Chun had been possessed by Clara and Brooke. This wasn't the woman he remembered. Could it be? Did she find out he'd done something wrong? Was it about that time he found that piece of clothing under her apartment building and didn't return it? Or was it last night? Sweat poured down Jason's forehead as his mind raced, trying to recall every bad deed he'd ever committed. He finally landed on the clothing incident. But it wasn't his fault. He had wanted to turn it in, but the one he'd found, he remembered seeing her wear it. He was afraid if he turned it in, he'd be mistaken for a thief. In a situation like that, you were guilty until proven innocent. A guilty look crossed his face. Seeing his guilt, Chun's expression turned triumphant. Jason, are you ready to confess to your professor? She asked, her eyes flicking to a pink envelope on the windowsill, a flicker of excitement in them. From his blush, he was probably about to bring it up. Honestly, she wasn't that old-fashioned. A 10-year age gap wasn't a big deal, as long as Jason. Chun's cheeks flushed with anticipation. But Jason's next words made her question her entire existence. Professor, I admit it. I did find a lavender nightgown, but I swear I didn't do anything with it. I swear on my life. Jason declared earnestly. Dr. Chun froze. Well, what? So that's where it went. She had searched her whole apartment for it. This little brat had stolen it. You, Jason, how could you steal something like that? Dr. Chen's face turned bright red. She had always thought he was so innocent. She never imagined he had this side to him. She felt like she had uncovered something incredible. Jason's mouth twitched. He knew it. Who would believe he just found it? Profs, Jason tried to explain, but then he saw her turn, walk to her closet, and open it. An entire wardrobe filled with beautiful lingerie and nightgowns of every color came into view. Jason's eyes widened, and he felt a sudden warmth in his nose. Were they really doing this? But Dr. Chen didn't give him time to react. Her soft fingers covered his eyes. What's wrong? You had the nerve to take my things back then, but now you don't even dare to look? Or is it that your heart is in turmoil, Jason? Her warm breath tickled his ear, her voice teasing and triumphant, like a hunter who had finally cornered her prey. Jason swallowed hard. He watched, mesmerized, as Dr. Chen's red lips drew closer. A stampede of curses galloped through his mind, but his body wouldn't move. Shock was his first instinct, paralysis his second. Knock, knock, knock. Jason's internal conflict was raging, but in the final second, a knock came from the door. He snapped out his trance and shoved her away. Professor Chun, this isn't right. Even if he didn't like Wesley, Professor Chun was engaged to him. More importantly, she was his teacher. How could he do something like that? Dr. Chun pushed away abruptly, looked disappointed, and glared at the door. Who is it? Professor Chun, I heard noises in your room. I'm coming in. Brooklyn's voice came from outside, and without waiting for a reply, she pushed the door open. Jason panicked and, with lightning speed, vaulted out the open window. When Brooke entered, the room was empty. Jason! She saw the open window and rushed to it, shouting his name. She had seen the bedding on the floor the moment she opened the door. He was definitely here. He probably slept here last night. But the yard below was empty. Brooke's face instantly darkened. Find him. Bring him back to me. She roared at her bodyguards, then rushed downstairs. But Jason's gym training hadn't been for nothing. He was already hiding on the other side of the villa. While Brooke was heading down, he slipped out the back gate and disappeared. By the time Brooke got downstairs, he was long gone, leaving only footprints in the damp grass. Useless. A bunch of useless fools. If you can't find Jason, I'll make every single one of you disappear just like him. Brooke's eyes were bloodshot, her beautiful face contorted with rage. Yes, ma'am. The bodyguards broke out in a cold sweat and scrambled to search for him. Brooke turned her icy gaze on Dr. Chun, who had followed her downstairs. Professor Chun, is this what you meant when you said Jason wasn't here? This old-fashioned relic had dared to lie to her. Thinking back on Dr. Chen's behavior the past couple of days, the makeup, the new clothes, even the subtle manicure, had this woman actually fallen for Jason? Miss Lin, you barge into my house and cause a scene, and I haven't even settled the score with you, Dr. Chen's patience had reached its limit, and her voice turned cold. And whether Jason is here or not has nothing to do with you. He trusts me, so even if I knew where he was, I would never tell you. Please leave. Normally, she was polite to the scions of New York's elite families. But now, she had been so close. And Brooklyn had ruined everything.